Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This is going to be our Battletome Stormcast review. We're going to go through each one of the rules, all of the war scrolls, and we're going to break down all of how the different units will work, and maybe give you some hot takes on which units you're going to want to pick up, or which units you might see play. The most recent Battletomes in Age of Sigmar 4 have not featured any points, and it will be a couple of weeks before those points are released out into the wild, and so we'll get some context for some of these units. But I will follow this video up with additional videos once those points are out, so we can start to really understand what those units might look like, and also we'll make some list videos, so we can start putting some lists together and working through them as well. Obviously, I've already been covering loads of Stormcast lists and lots of Age of Sigmar 4 lists on the Age of Sigmar Stat Center, so I've already got a good idea of how the game is working. I'm just freshly back from the USA, where I was at the North American Team Masters, where teams of 8 battled out amongst each other. So I'm pretty excited. And Stormcast, I played literally last night. So I'm very excited to go through this Stormcast book, look at all the different units, really hoping prosecutors are still good. Let me know in the comments below which units you like, how you've enjoyed playing Stormcast, which armies you're looking forward to playing with, which units you like, all of those things in the comments below, because the more comments you leave to me, the more I learn about how the community feels about the game and the army. So let's get straight into it and start looking at the army rules. And if you've got any questions, also leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them as well. Anything I can do to make you enjoy this game more is what I'm here for. Let's get straight into the rules. First up, we're going to look at the battle traits. These are the army special rules. If you are new to Age of Sigmar, this is going to be your rules for all of your Stormcast Eternal army. However, if you are not new to Age of Sigmar, I'm just going to say that this is probably very similar to the Index version of Stormcast Eternals. And one of the things I like about the Index and the Stormcast book being very similar is, I'm not necessarily loving it, but I do like the fact that stuff that you bought in the Index is probably going to be really viable now, and that there's not too much of a change. Because I think after 12 weeks, a massive 12, 14 weeks, a massive change to how your army works would have been really destructive. But I'm hoping the armies of renown and the armies of renown specifically, are really going to change up how you can play your Stormcast and add something to your army. So that's what I'm excited about seeing. So your army special rules, you've got 4 of them. They're called battle traits, and the first 2 are to do with being able to put units in reserve. The first one, the Celestial Realm, basically lets you put half of the number of Stormcast units that you've got into reserve, so off the board. And then Scions of the Storm, which you do in your movement phase, so that's during deployment. And then Scions of the Storm, which you do in your movement phase, allows you to take those units from reserve and set them up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy units. This is genuinely really good, because this means that your opponent is always going to have to castle and protect some of their major centerpiece models. Also very effective against enemy pieces of terrain, which is super good. Those Loon Shrines looking really scared all the time. And in addition, your army has several units which have inbuilt 3d6 charges. So normally a 9-inch charge from Deep Strike is not super successful, even with a reroll. A 3d6 charge from Deep Strike with a reroll is super effective. Also, if you end up in a shooting meta, or you have a more fragile unit like Long Strikes currently play a role as, you could always put them in reserve, then you can put them on the board and start shooting, which means they're not going to get shot off. It's a very, very useful, very tactile ability. It also means if you really wanted to, you could deep strike quite a few units, a lot of your major threats, and then also overload your opponent in a certain section of the board. Do that. The other 2 abilities are, one is once per battle. It's Heaven Sent, and it costs a command point. That's what that little 1 number up in the right-hand corner means. You pick a friendly, non-unique. Unique is a keyword that you find at the bottom of a battle scroll. It normally means that the unit, like a named character, is a unique unit. So a non-unique Stormcast Eternals infantry or cavalry unit that started the battle with 2 or more models and that's been destroyed to be the target. You set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit rounding up, more than 9 inches from all enemy units. That's wicked, especially as you can have some very effective infantry and cavalry in this army. Cost a command point, you can only do it once, but unlike things like Gits, as an example, some of the other armies, it's a 4-up, some of them it's also a command point, some of it's locked to a terrain piece. So this is just, you can do it really, really good, and you've got some really solid units. Is it as good in Nagash bringing back a whole death unit? No. It's still good. It's genuinely very, very good. And lastly, and I think this is way better than it reads, is their finest hour. Once per turn across the army in your hero phase, you pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals unit that has not used this ability to use this ability. For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to wound rolls. And you add 1 to wound rolls for that unit's combat attacks and add 1 to the save rolls. This is the ability just up here. Sorry, my head's in the way. And add 1 to save rolls for that unit. This is super good for 2 different reasons. Number 1, if you really want your unit to be that much more punchy, most of your army is going to be 3s and 3s. That means you're going to be wounded on 2s. That's great. But where I think this becomes incredibly effective, you get +1. You get +1 to the save rolls. Now, it's only for the rest of the turn, so it's not until the start of your next turn, but +1 save is really nice because you have a 3-up armor save base down to a 2-up save. You can all-out defense later, which means if your opponent, for example, is going to hit you in combat really hard or is even going to use covering fire, which is a really popular tactic at the moment, then you have got a very defensive front line to get hit. So, really great ability. As Allegiance abilities, they're not as good as some, but they're pretty good. So I think a lot of the strength from the Stormcast abilities come from their war scrolls, but all of these really help exemplify how they work. As well as your battle traits, you're also going to have access to your faction terrain. Your faction terrain is called a Stormreach Portaloo, or that's what it's been called on the internet. You are able to destroy faction terrain in Age of Sigmar 4, and this piece of faction terrain isn't overly sturdy. It's got 12 health and a 4-up save. It's not too bad, but what it does also create as a piece of terrain, and you can see it down here. Here's a picture. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the Portaloo. It's been kind of like, a lot of people love it, a lot of people don't love it. I'm really interested to find out what you think. One of the big things that faction terrain does is it gives your opponent a deep striking point on the board. What do I mean by that? Well, you are able to, if you were to put a unit down in deep strike, put it right next to a piece of faction terrain because it doesn't count as a unit in the movement phase, which means you effectively can do like a 0-inch charge. So whatever you do charge, if you don't bang your 9-inch charge into the unit you're trying to charge, you might be able to like still hit the terrain or move around it and stuff. So it actually poses as much of a benefit as it does a problem for you if you do bring it in your army. However, this ability, Step into the Storm, is pretty great, especially in conjunction with the battle trait that you've got, because in your movement phase, you can pick a friendly, non-monster Stormcast Eternals unit that is not in combat and is wholly within 6 inches of this terrain feature to be the target. You can remove that target from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. We did discuss that with the battle traits that you have for Stormcast, you are only going to be able to put half of your units in reserve. This gives you another free teleport. Normally, you would have things like a Lord Relictor, or you previously would have a Lord Relictor to do other teleports, or even you would have from your battle formations the ability to teleport, but it would be on a dice roll, a 3-up. This does not require a dice roll. So this is a very order-focused ability. If this was a destruction ability, it would require you to have a character and also be like mounted in it, and it would be on like a 4-up. So the fact that this is just absolutely will work and you can teleport another unit to support your deep striking units is very cool. Very, very cool. Also means that like you could like drop units on objectives, a bunch of different stuff. So it's a great ability. A huge piece of terrain that you got to paint to add to your Stormcast collection. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. It's fairly survivable, and you're not too stressed if it does end up getting destroyed. So, because it's not like a Gits. I always talk about the Gits terrain, because Gits terrain is super crucial to how a Gits army works. Whereas this, like, it's a teleport, you don't really care. But it's a great ability. You should be super chuffed. So after those rules you definitely get, when you start writing your army list, you need to start making some choices. And the first choice you're going to make is between the 4 different battle formations. If you play an event, you'll maintain the same formation the entire time. So the 4 different battle formations give you especially good abilities to different keyworded units. The first one, Sentinels of the Bleak Citadels, gives you the ability Ancient Aura, which is done once per turn across the whole army in any hero phase. You pick a friendly Ruination Chamber unit, so that's a keyword, so that's a lot of the new units. That unit has a 5-up ward save for the rest of the turn. Obviously, if you do this in conjunction with Finest Hour, you're now given a unit +1 save and a 5-up ward save, which is pretty good if you're sending them in to a big fight. The next one, the Thunderhead Host, gives you the passive Synchronized Strikes. You add one to the hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Warrior Chamber units, again, keyword at the bottom, while they are wholly within 12 inches of any friendly, non-hero, non-beast, which is a keyword, Stormcast Eternals units that do not have the Warrior Chamber keyword. Now, Warrior Chamber units are not super flashy, but +1 to hit army-wide is pretty nice, especially as there's a command point you're probably going to want to save for bringing a unit back from the dead. You want to use it for all-out defense. You want to use it for other stuff, probably covering fire, which is shooting your opponent's turn. So getting free +1 to hit on multiple units is good, but difficult to organize because you've got to get them all together. Next one, Vanguard Wing. Is done once per turn in your army in your movement phase, and then you pick a friendly Vanguard Chamber unit that did not use a move ability this turn and is not in combat. You roll a dice on a 3-up, remove that unit from the battlefield and set up again anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So this is a free but unreliable teleport that you can do, but seeing as now, and it's also keyworded to only Vanguard units, but seeing as now you've already got a piece of terrain that's going to do it for you for free, this is probably not going to be that popular. And lastly, Lightning Echelon gives you the ability of Oncoming Storm, which you do once per turn in the army in any combat phase. You pick a friendly Extremist Chamber unit that charge this turn, and then roll a dice on a 3-up. That unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. Some good things about this in conjunction is the fact that it's in any combat phase, which if you get a counter charge in your opponent's turn and you do have an Extremist Chamber unit that did a counter charge, then on a 3-up they're going to get strike first. So even in your opponent's turn, you're going to be able to get strike first, which is really nice. But you do need to smash that counter charge. But like I've said, you've got some good long bomb charging units in this army. I think that's good. I like that. Vanguard Wing, yes, has been pointed out in the chat, is excellent for being able to teleport around, for example, your long strikes, if they're still good or if they're still cheap. We won't know about that for a couple of weeks. Sentinels Oblique Citadel is in any hero phase. So that does mean that, in your opponent's turn, give them a 5-up ward. So if your opponent is going to try and tackle one of your units or picks one of your units as the choice for a battle tactic, then you'd be 5-up ward on that unit, which is also really nice as well. So these aren't changed from what they were, but apart from the Thunderhead Host, but they're all pretty good depending on which units you're going to take. And really, I think this book is about the units that are good, and then you get the bonuses on top. But maybe with Thunderhead Host, you want to get all those pluses to hit on your big combat blocks. We'll have to see. But right now, not bad options for lots of different builds in the army. And this is going to be a very wide book. Lots of different options. I'm sure, like Slaves to Darkness as an example, there will just be some internal balance issues where some units are just better than other units in their role. But I think you've still got a lot of ways to play this, which is good. The next thing we need to look at is that you can get some objective markers from us, some Stormcast Eternal ones. Oh, no, Thundercast Matortals, or whatever they're called, on the honestwargamer.com. If you want to go check them out, they're cool. And they're fun little resin tokens you can paint. Hope you enjoy them. Also, objective markers. Go find out. On your army list, one of your heroes, one of your non-unique heroes, and it can be your general, but doesn't have to be your general, can have a heroic trait. There's 3 to choose from. The first one, Shock and Awe, is a passive. The effect is each time this unit is set up using the Signs of the Storm ability, you subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks that target this unit from the rest of the battle round. That's when you basically set a unit up from reserve. In addition, each time a friendly Stormcast Eternals unit is set up wholly within 12 inches of this unit, using that ability as well, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target that unit for the rest of the battle round. -1 to hit might not sound like a really big deal, but actually, with other -1 to hits that you can stack in this army, and also in addition, the fact that some units in the game have been really hammered, where they hit on 4s but wound on 2s. Rotguts are a really good example. Then I personally think that actually this is stronger than it seems, especially if you're running a more deep strike centric army. I think that's good. It's also for the rest of the battle round as well. Now, that's a little bit of a shocker, because if you are going second in a turn, it's just going to be for that second in a battle round. It's just going to be for that battle round. So that limits its effectiveness, but not bad as an ability, especially if you're running something more deep strike or more aggro, which is what I've been running. The next one, Envoy of the Heavens, I think will probably see the most play. This is an ability that you do in your hero phase, and if a friendly Stormcast Eternals unit was destroyed in the previous turn, you pick a visible friendly Stormcast Eternals unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target, that target has a 5-up ward save until the start of your next turn, which is a significant amount of time, obviously with priority rolls coming into effect as well. This is an ability where it works so nicely if you've got an incredibly tanky unit already. One of the strengths of Stormcast is they almost always have 3-up armor saves, lots of health. Now we're getting a 5-up ward save, or another way to get a 5-up ward save, because we've already got a way to get a 5-up ward save if you're running a particular battle formation. So you can do really nice stuff here and have lots of, good armor, good at ward saves, and units are sadly going to die. I don't love abilities that only activate if my units die, but this is nice. This is a nice addition to your army. So I think this will be the one that's most popular. And lastly, Staunch Defender is a passive where, while this unit is contesting an objective, if in friendly territory, add 3 to the control scores of friendly Stormcast Eternal units contesting that objective. This is a double stipulation. You must be contesting objective while in friendly territory, and then you add 3 to the control scores. So it's really not very good at all. But I can't see you taking that, and you're probably going to be fighting for the other 2. Also on your army list, one of your heroes, and it can be your general, but doesn't have to be, but can't be a unique unit, is allowed an artifact of power. There are 3 to choose from. The first one and the worst one is the Null Pendant, where once per battle... Oh, I didn't even read it was once per battle. Oh my god. At the end of any turn, pick an enemy unit in combat this unit to be the target, subtract 5 from the target's control score for the rest of the turn. Just don't choose that. It's really bad. Multiple reasons. It's once per battle, it's garbage. It's -5, it's garbage. Just kill stuff to score points. The next 2 are pretty interesting. Quicksilver Draft is once per battle in any combat phase, and the effect is that this unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. This is Quicksilver Draft. This is pretty good if you have like a big Star Drake model. So it's basically a deterrent because it's in any combat phase. Your opponent charges you, you'd be like, I'm going to be strike first if you do charge me. So they're going to think maybe I won't charge you. It really depends how good your big hero models are going to be. Maybe even some of our foot fighting characters will be good. Don't forget, non-unique characters aren't going to be able to take this. So your Bastion, for example, isn't going to be able to have it. But maybe some of your other foot fighting characters will be good for having a fight and having strike first. But it's only going to be once per battle, so it's going to have to be an effective action when you do finally decide to use it. And the last ability, Mirror Shield, or the last artifact, Mirror Shield, is a passive where this unit cannot be targeted by shooting attacks unless the attacking model is within 9 inches of it. So that's pretty good and probably going to be one of the really popular choices, specifically because you are going to be having the choice between, you're going to need wizards and priests. I'm going to talk loads later when we start talking about spells and prayers and about economies of scale. And you do want to keep your support characters, especially in the manifestation meta, being able to summon lots of spells, as an example, or do lots of prayers. You're going to want to be able to keep them safe. And shooting is where your opponent can get to them. And so this is good. It's also good if you just have a big model, and that is safe at a distance. And it's quite nice seeing as several of your units can already start off the board. So now several units are off the board, can't be shot. This unit can't be shot unless you get within 9 inches of it. And being within 9 inches is, ladies and gentlemen, within countercharge range. So it's a good artifact, and probably one you'll see a lot. Next up on your army list, you'll need to choose a spell lore. I don't know why, because you only have access to one spell lore, and it's Lore of the Storm. You've got 3 different spells, as well as manifestations and War Scroll specific spells that you're going to be able to cast with your Stormcast Eternals army. A note now, because this is true through the book, is that Stormcast Eternals can't necessarily put a lot of casts on the board. What I mean by that is a wizard can cast, a wizard who's power level 1 can cast 1 spell. You have a lot of power level 1 wizards in this book. You have at least 1, 2, and you have the Storm Coven, which we'll talk about later, who have the ability to be a 2 cast as well as being a non-hero unit, so you can take multiple of them. So there's the chance to get lots and lots of spells that way. However, your spells are already going to be utilized for either trying to get manifestations or stop manifestations using the banishment ability. So, unfortunately, the Stormcast book is has got a little bit of a dearth, a lack of power levels compared to like a Slan who's just like 200 whatever points for 3 casts, etc. So you've got some good spells, but getting those spells off in conjunction with being able to use manifestations a little bit more challenging. All right, so first one we're going to talk about Lightning Blast, cast on a 5. Pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals wizard to cast his spell, then pick the closest visible enemy unit. That is not being picked to be the target of this ability. this turn to be the target. If 2 or more visible enemy units are tied, you choose the closest. Then make a casting roll and inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. So, like, this is pretty weak source. It's only D3 mortals, whatever. Pick the closest visible enemy unit to them, and that has not been picked to be the target. The other situation is I could put an Incarnate on the board, or I could do one of the other good manifestations. There's no competition, so it's not particularly good, right? Next up, Thundershock, which is cast on a 6. Now, this is a good spell. Pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals wizard to cast this spell. Pick a visible enemy unit within 12 to be the target. And it's within 12, not wholly within 12, which is nice. Subtract 1 from wound rolls to the target for the target's attacks until the start next turn. It's pretty nice, especially as we know that there's a way potentially to get some -1s as well. So -1 to wound's really good, because the same conversation about minuses to hit is also true. Some units are really bad at wounding, so making them -1 to wound is very effective. But the last one, best one, Starfall's cast on a 7. Pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals wizard to cast his spell, and pick a visible enemy infantry or cavalry within 18, right? Only within 18. And it's not wholly within, so it's a really good spell. But it is keyword locked to only infantry or cavalry, which is a little bit disappointing. Until the start of your next turn, you subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled when making charging rolls to the target to a minimum of 1. That's an amazing spell, because it's until the start of your next turn. So I can cast that. If I was a Stormcast player, I could cast that in my turn, and then being able to cast in my opponent's turn using Counterspell means that I can also shut down another unit. So that's 2 units only charging on a single D6, which means they're very unlikely to be able to get charges off, especially when I can also redeploy. They move within 3 inches, I redeploy. Now, it's very unlikely they're going to be able to get that charge off into me. So this is an incredibly good spell, very effective, and could win you games. Stop your opponent from scoring a battle tactic. So you probably always want to spend a CP or have a CP available to be able to shut down their charging. I think this is a really good spell, which is good. The others are fine, but manifestations are stronger, and because you only get so many casts in your army, each one of your spells is competing with something else that may be more effective, but not too bad. Next up, if you've got any priests in your army, you're going to be able to use the prayer law. And there's quite a lot of priests in this army. You've got Ionis, a bunch of different, unnamed characters like a Knight Relictor. So you're going to have lots of potential power levels when it comes to doing prayers. You've got 3 prayers in your Prayer of the Storm host. The first one is Healing Storm, which has got a chanting value of 4. Pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals priest to chant the prayer, and then pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals unit wholly within 12 inches of them to be the target. And then if you get the prayer off, you heal D3. That's your unlimited spell, so you're going to be able to do it multiple times. If the chanting roll was an 8+, you heal D3 for each visible friendly Stormcast Eternal unit wholly within 12 inches of the chanter instead. So this is going to be really effective if you have lots of multi-wound models, and you do have some very good multi-wound models like Paladors and Dracoths and Star Drakes and big dragons. You've got lots of good units there that are going to want to heal D3 all the time. It becomes less effective on lots of your 3-wound infantry because they've got to be down to 1 for it to even be effective. And I'm not sure if I'm taking a priest for that situation. So Healing Storm, I'm not super sure on. Blessed Weapons is cool. It's got a really high casting value, though. It's cast on a 6. You pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals priest to chant this prayer, and you pick a visible friendly Stormcast Eternals infantry unit wholly within 12 inches of them to be the target. So they do not want you using this on any of the cavalry, which is unfortunate. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons to the start of your next turn. The chant rolls a 12. This ability affects all visible friendly Stormcast Eternal units wholly within 12 inches of the chanter. So +1 attacks is pretty good, but you're a Stormcast Eternal. You aren't like bricks of 40 infantry where +1 attack is really effective. Instead, you're normally 2-3 attacks already with a Stormcast. So you're not really doubling their output, normally just adding 25% out to their output, which is genuinely not bad. Honestly, I'm not complaining, but the high casting value is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So you're going to have to really set this up in the right moment to do the big hit. Are you going to build this into your list to do? You could do. Let me know if you're going to. And lastly, Translocation, which is done on a 4, which is nice and reasonable. Pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals priest to chant this prayer. Pick a visible friendly Stormcast Eternals unit wholly within 12 to be the target. Then make a chanting roll. Remove the target from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. In addition, if the chant roll is an 8, subtract 1 from hit rolls to attack that target for the rest of the battle round. With the inclusion of the new terrain piece, I'm not sure you're going to need another teleport as much as translocation, like as much as translocation gives you the option. But translocation's got a really nice ability in that you can use a CP, a command ability, to do this in your opponent's turn, therefore getting a unit out of dodge, trying to deny a battle tactic. Imagine your opponent chooses the unit in front of your priest to be the focus of a battle tactic. They're going to kill it. You just teleport it away. Now you've denied the battle tactic. Your opponent would be pretty dumb to choose that in that situation, but sometimes you don't have a choice, as an example. So there's some really good potential uses here outside of what you can see. But you already have a lot of teleports. If you're being aggressive, this feels like it's better in a kind of a defensive role. And are you bringing a priest into your army for that kind of defensive situation? We'll have to see. Some of the priests already themselves have good prayers on their war scrolls. So these are all nice, maybe in addition prayers that you have. And when we start looking through all the priests in a bit, we can look back and think, it's nice that you can also do this in the right situation. So I like these. I like all of them, but they're not necessarily game changing, like, strike lasts or strike first or 3d6 charges, but, +1 attack and a teleport, not too bad. Also, on your army list, you're going to be able to choose a manifestation law. There are, unlike these, the unique manifestation laws. Unlike your spell law and your prayer law, there are generic manifestation laws that you're also able to choose. The most popular, obviously, in Age of Sigmar right now is the Morbi Conj, or the Morbi Conjuration. But there are more than those. There's Primal Sorceries, Twilight Sorceries, all those, whatever they are. But as Stormcast, you do have access to your own unique ones, which is pretty cool. And they all do something slightly different. You got Summon Dias Arcanum, which is one of the three, which is pretty fun because it's going to let your wizard run around. We'll talk about it in a minute. It's got a summoning value of a 6. You need a wizard to summon these, and you set up within half an inch of a target, and that target needs to be a Stormcast Eternal's infantry hero specifically. So that's the one that's pretty unique. The other two, Summon Celestial Vortex and Summon Everblaze Comet. The Vortex is summoned on a 6, and then set up within 18 inches of the caster, more than 9 inches from enemy. And it's a moving manifestation, which means it's going to do things like stop units from moving within 3 inches of it unless they're charging it, stop units deep striking within 9 inches, as an example, because it's going to be considered to be a unit. And then Summon Everblaze Comet, which is a non-moving one, which means it can be set up within 9 inches of your opponent, or within 3 inches of your opponent if you want. And then that's cast on an 8, which is really high casting value, and you set it up within 18 inches of the caster. So let's talk about each one of them, and we could probably start with the Comet. Comet's a pretty interesting one because it's basically a one-use case bomb, and then the only way that you can use it again is if your opponent banishes it or if you banish it. And thanks to the new FAQ, you're never going to be able to banish it and then recast it, which is a little bit sad. It's cast on an 8, which is really high casting value, and you do have some wizards with some good casting bonuses in this army, but it's still a high cast when, for an 8, you could be getting a Purple Sun or an Incarnate. However, if you do cast it in any hero phase, if this manifestation was summoned this phase, pick any number of units within 6 inches, roll a d3 on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on them. That's not a bad shout. If you're early in the game, turn 1, if you're low drops, your opponent's all kind of clustered together, you drop this right on their heads, and then you're able to do a ton of mortal damage. It's pretty good. And then maybe later in the game, you can do it a little bit more, but it's going to get weaker and weaker. And then the passive that you get, subtract 1 from casting rolls for enemy wizards while they're within 12 inches of this manifestation. It doesn't have a attack value, which lots of manifestations have, and also it doesn't move. So once it drops down and does that damage, it's pretty weak source. It might be really good. Like, you'll have to let me know if you try it out. I personally don't think I would take it. It's got 5 health and a 4-up save, so it's pretty survivable. The other two, first one we'll talk about is Celestian Vortex, which has got 7 health, 6-up save, moves 8 inches. You can't move a manifestation after you've summoned it. It's then got 12 attacks in combat, 4s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1, with crit auto wound. as an ability. And then it's got a passive, Tornado and Magic, where you subtract 1 from hit rolls for shooting attacks made by enemy units while they're within 12 inches of this manifestation. Now, if the meta, or even your local gaming club, or even a match that you're planning has got a lot of shooting, I don't know, 80 Bliss Barb Archers as an example, then this is going to be really effective for shutting down that shooting, or at least making them -1 to hit. So that's not a bad shout. In the right matchups, could be very, very effective. But personally, I don't think it's super strong, especially compared to other options available. That's the problem with manifestations. They're always fighting against other available options. And the last one, Dice Arcanum, is really cool. Like, I love this. It's super fun. So you got to do it on a friendly infantry hero. And then while you have done that, they get the Arcane Enhancement passive. While the unit was picked to be the target of the Summon Dice Arcanum ability is on the platform, they get a 5-up ward save. We love that. The unit is if the unit is a wizard, you add 1 to the unit's power level. We love that. So now they're power level 2, pretty decent. That unit cannot use the move abilities or remains on the manifestation, but the manifestation moves 8 inches. So you've probably made that unit move a little bit faster. Instead of measuring range or visibility to and from that unit, measure to and from the manifestation. And lastly, this manifestation cannot be picked to be the target of abilities other than the banish abilities. So that's you can't shoot the dice out, you've got to banish it out. If this manifestation is banished before removing it from the battlefield, set up the unit on the battlefield within 3 inches of it. The unit can only be set up in combat. Yes, if it was already in combat, if it's not possible set that unit up, it is destroyed. If the unit on the platform is destroyed, immediately remove this manifestation from play. So shoot the unit, and then you get it. It feels pretty fun. And you got to remember, there's like the power level of stuff, the effectiveness of stuff, which is, I think, part of what this video is meant to be about. But ultimately, this is definitely easily the most fun thing we've read so far. I mean, it's already a very dynamic book. I could deep strike a load of stuff. Really cool. I've got the ability now to pop a wizard on one of these bad boys and float him around and be an extra casty wizard. That feels really nice. So I quite like that. I think that's fun, especially because you can resummon it as an example. So yeah, the manifestation law probably doesn't compete with the other manifestation laws that are available, from like a competitive or even like strength level. But at least one of them is really fun and engaging, and you can have like a surfboarding Stormcast, and that's pretty cool. Now we're starting to look at units, and we're going to start looking at all the heroes first from the Stormcast Eternals roster, and it is going to be an absolutely decked level of heroes. There are so many to choose from, and when you are picking units, you have to remember everything we've already talked about. You got to talk about the synergy or even the increased effectiveness of units thanks to the abilities that we've seen previously, and there haven't actually been a lot of abilities that we've seen so far that really increase the efficacy of the units that we're going to be talking about. So hopefully we're going to find those inside the heroes. And also, when you're building a list in Age of Sigmar, your heroes are going to be the leaders of your battle regiments, and so some heroes are going to unlock a lot of units and give you a more wide and varied army playstyle, and some are going to only unlock a couple of different types of units. So the first unit we're going to look at is the Celestin Prime. He definitely fits in the category of just pure damage dealer and not necessarily a force multiplier or a synergistic piece in an army. And so you really are going to have to weight him against other damage dealing pieces in the army, like infantry units, cavalry units that you're going to be able to definitely stack points on. So Celestin Prime has got 10 health, 3-up save, and a 5-up ward save. This is our first time looking at a war scroll, so I should just point out that down here is where you see all of the keywords. War Master, which means that he is going to be the general, or they are going to be the general of an army, unless you have another War Master, and there are loads of them, and then you can obviously choose between the two. But it has to be the general, which, at time of recording means that you open some battle tactics against the Celestin Prime. For instance, being able to slay the entourage, you would target him. And seeing as he's fairly survivable, but not mega survivable, maybe we'll give up that battle tactic. Anyway, so that's War Master, that general. Unique, you can only have one of them, if you even want one. And importantly, it's got the flight keyword over in the side and a 5-up ward save. So 10 health, 3-up armor save, 5-up ward save. Pretty survivable, but as a frontline fighter, I wouldn't say overly survivable. There are other versions of similar kind of units, like you've got 16 health on a Bloodthirster with a 4-up and a 5-up as a good example. So compare them to that. They're not as he's probably not as expensive as a Bloodthirster, but probably not as survivable. Anyway, 3 up save. And then in combat, he's got 6 attacks, 3s, 2s, Ren 2, damage 4. Genuinely legit with crit mortals. I think that that's fine. It's not the best, but it's fine. Other armies would kill to have a unit that is movement 12, nice and fast, and can hit this hard, which is pretty good. He's also got an ability, Comet Strike Scepter, which is a ranged weapon. He's only got 1 shot that hits on a 2, but if it does hit, thanks to the passive Comet Strike Scepter, it's going to do D3 mortal damage, which is okay. And then he's got this last ability, Retribution from on high, which you do in your movement phase. And it's very wordy, but effectively what it means, for every battle round that you leave him in reserve, therefore not using him, which is a bit of a waste, then you -1 from you add +1 to your teleports, because your charges. Because normally you have to teleport 9 inches away. And then in Battle Round 1, it's 9 inches away. Battle Round 2, it's 8 inches away. Battle Round 3, it's 7 inches away. So you're a little bit closer for doing those charges. And lastly, probably the weakest part about this unit is his control score 2. If you look at something like Severith or the Foxes, their control score 5, and their ability to move around the board, grab a little objective as a monster, and grab something is pretty good. He's in fact not even a monster. No, he's infantry. So people are going to get a lot of pluses to rend against him. There's a lot of like plus rend against infantry in the game. Citizen Prime is a pure damage dealing unit. You got to ask yourself, are there other damage dealing units in this army which do more damage or are more survivable for the points? The answer is yes. He's not very good. Competing with the Citizen Prime in the kind of combat role is a single character, Yannastra, the Celestial Spear. Now, Yannastra is a War Master as well and unique, so you're only going to have 1 of her. And she's a little less survivable with only 8 health, 3 up save, and a 5 up ward save. She's fast, she moves 12, and she does also have that negative of being control score 2. Like the Citizen Prime, she's an infantry unit, so you're going to be able to get blessed weapons for +1 attacks on the melee weapons, and she has 2, which is really good. Really, really good. But she has 2 abilities, at least, I think, which are incredibly effective. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the Prime Huntress, which is a passive. You double the damage characteristic of this unit's Thengavar, incredibly fun to say, Thengavar, for attacks that target monsters, the monster keyword. Now, Thengavar, she's got a shooting attack with Thengavar and also 2 combat attacks with Thengavar, and both of them are anti-monster +1 rend. So the ranged weapon is only 1 shot, but it's 3s and 2s, rend 2, rend 3 against a monster, damage 4 or damage 8 against a monster. That's pretty good. That's half a Bloodthirster in a single shot. Then in combat, Thengavar is 2 attacks, 2s and 2s, very reliable. Rend 2, unless it's a monster, in which case it's Rend 3, damage 3 or damage 6 into a monster. So just against a monster alone, you can be giving them 20 damage in a single turn, which feels pretty good. And then the Blade of the High Heavens has got 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 3. And in addition, don't forget you can get +1 attacks if you're doing blessed weapons. So you could have like 3 attacks with Thengavar, 6 attacks with the Blade of the High Heavens. I think it's really good. But the reason I think Yannastra is very, very good is she's on quite a small base. I think it's a 60 mil. And she's got this passive on Wings of Brilliance, where you add 1 to the number of dice rolls when making charge rolls to this unit to a maximum of 3. So you could be making like an 18-inch charge. Obviously, that's probably not what you're going to get. I think the average on 3d6 is like 11. Something like that. So like 10 or 11. I think it's 11 rounding up. So that does mean, though, when you do deep strike her or even teleport her using the terrain piece, then you are very likely to be able to go and grab that monster that's sitting on the board. And we are in the centerpiece edition, where many of the abilities or allegiance abilities that we see for different units are key locked into certain characters. And some characters, as in a good example, like Be'lakor, is so popular and they're used so much, they're just so good, and is a monster that you're going to want to go and beat him up with Yannastra. So I love Yannastra as a piece because she's more effective at charging than the Celestin Prime. She's definitely better against the units that she wants to charge, and then she's also got an ability called Dazzling Radiance, where you ignore the modifiers to the control scores for friendly Stormcast Eternal units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Not that I think that's going to come in as a big deal, but I think she's really good. She should be fairly popular. And if you are looking for a really fun piece, even if you are just the most casual gamer, take this model, run around, stabbing monsters. Sounds really fun. Great unit. Now, this is going to seem a little bit odd, but before we look at any more of the heroes, we're going to look at a unit that you can take multiple times called Prors. Prors are 3 models, and each model of that unit has got 3 health with a 3-up save, which is pretty defensive. 9 health, pretty nice. In combat, they're okay. 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. But that's not the reason that you're taking Prors, although it's a nice additional bonus, obviously being able to jab a fool. The reason that you're taking Prors, if you're running Stormcast, you might want to pick some up, is because of the soul bonded ability that you do in your deployment phase. This has been FAQ'd so that you can do this even if the unit is in reserve. You pick a friendly Stormcast Eternals hero to be this unit's soul bonded charge for the rest of the battle. So, and then you get the passive Soulforged Guardians. While this unit's soul bonded charge is within this unit's combat range, both this unit and the soul bonded charge have a 5-up ward save. So the reason I want to talk about this now, before we talk about any of the other heroes, is there's a way to always get a 5-up ward save on lots of the different models, or hero models specifically, that we're going to talk about, as well as make this unit more effective. So they're pretty fun. It's a pretty cool ability, especially when we're about to talk about a giant dragon. So that's why we're talking about this now. But a 5-up ward save for these, a 5-up ward save for a dragon, really good, but also really effective on some foot characters as well. So pretty cool. So the next hero we're going to look at is another unique War Master. You can only take one of him, and it's one of 2 different dragon brothers, the last of their race. You know, last of your race. There's only 2 of you left. I'm going to leave that to your imagination. Anyway, Kazai the Scarred is a combat monster, literally has the monster keyword, and for survivability, he's got 20 health and a 3-up armor save, but no ward save. But that's why we talked about Prors, because if you bring Prors along, you now got that incredibly survivable Kazai with the good armor save, the good health, being able to also use the ability to heal, because we looked at the prayers for healing earlier, as well as being able to do rally. So you could have a very survivable, very tanky, big base, huge base, it's like 160 mil base, monster that's going to be able to go fight stuff. Big question is for his points value plus also Prors, is he as good at fighting stuff as some other units you can take? It's the same conversation as Celestin Prime. So he's got a good shooting attacks, 12-inch range, got 1 attack, but it's 2s and 3s, rend 2, damage D3 plus 3. That's nice. Moves 12 inches as well. Should mention that. Speed is great. Doesn't have a 3d6 charge, but speed is really good. Massive base. Also, don't forget, control value 5, good for grabbing an objective. In combat, it's got 4 attacks, damage 4 with the Annihilating Jaws, which will rend 3 against infantry, which is 3s and 2s. And then the Drake Lord's Talons is 6 attacks, rend 2, damage 2, and it's 3s and 2s again. So +1 to hit is going to make this 2s and 2s across the board. That's a very strong combat profile. In addition, he's also got the way to get extra attacks on his combat weapons, thanks to the Fires of Retribution passive. While this unit has 5 to 9 damage points, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of its melee weapons. While it has 10 or more, you add 2 to the attacks characteristic. Now that's really, really good. Really, really good. Really good. +2, so now you got 6 attacks damage 4, 8 attacks damage 2. That's quite a lot of combat output. And then he's got this once per turn rampage done in any combat phase, which is every combat phase, where you pick an enemy unit in combat, roll a dice for each model on the target unit, and for 5+, they take a mortal damage. That's pretty nice, especially if you're going into, 40 clan rats, 40 plague monks, as an example of stuff that you may feature or see out there, in the future months. That's pretty good as well. And then Ancient Master of War is his last ability, which is done in any combat phase. And this is maybe the reason that he's very good. You pick an enemy unit within this unit's combat range to be the target, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of that target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. So now we've got the ability to -1 to the attacks characteristic of an enemy unit, give us a 5-up ward save, which is pretty nice. If you are still watching this video in 2024 or early 2025, the seasonal rules mean that you can have a bodyguard, so the Prors could be bodyguard, making it so that there's a further -1 to the attacks characteristic of units that target Kazai if he is your general, and he's a War Master, so he could very well be your general, and he's probably also 1 billion points, so that's quite effective as well. I think the fact that this guy can stand in the middle of the board and fight a bunch of stuff is cool. With a ward save is great. Being able to stomp stuff and just being a dragon is also fun. So I love this. I think it's great. But if I was starting to, like, count the pennies, I would ask myself what Kazai plus also Prors are really bringing to the table. Are they destroying units? I mean, pretty good combat profile. Are they bringing enough value for that versus other units I can bring? It's a great question. You'll have to let me know in the comments. Okay, so we're going to talk about Kazai's brother now, Kondis. Kondis has got pretty much an identical profile to Kazai. Moves 12 inches, control value 5. I didn't actually express just how good that move 12 is, and I'd like to reiterate right now that having 4 different War Masters that we've looked at so far, all of whom can move 12 inches, which is great. Really good in, a battle tactic and objective-based game is really good. So move 12 inches, excellent. But 20 health, 3-up save, can get a ward save, obviously, from your good Prors. I also didn't point out the fact that the Prors are pretty slow. So moving Kondis and Kazai around the board means it's going to be difficult for the Prors to keep up with them. Yes, you can deep strike them in. Maybe just put the model in the middle of the board and deep strike that model in. But there we go. They're fairly slow, so I just want to be clear. Anyway, same shooting profile, same combat profile, same everything. The only difference is, unlike Kazai, who gets pissed off and gets more attacks when he's damaged, when Kondis gets damaged, he loses 2 attacks on his apex more. So what do I get? Well, Kondis is a 2-cast wizard, which I'm going to put down as being worth 180 to 200 points. So if Kondis is not 200 points more than Kazai, I don't really see why I would take Kazai. I get he's got defensive abilities, but there we go. He also gets +2 to cast, which makes him one of the best casters in Age of Sigmar 4. So 2 casts can get +2 to cast. Amazing. Means he can cast, Incarnates from Manifestation Laws more effective. Can cast the incredible spell that you have in this army to reduce the charge rolls from 2d6 to 1d6, which is so good. I assume that's going to win you games. But then it's got its own unique spell, Activistic Tempest, which is cast on an 8 or cast on a 6 with +2 to cast, where you pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster to be the target, then pick one, and 18 inches is excellent range as well. Pick one of the following effects. -1 to hit from that unit, -1 to the rend characteristic, and then -1 to save rolls for the target, and it's till the start of your next turn. So I love all of those. -1 to hit, great. -1 to charge, great. -1 to subtract 1 from rend is good, especially when you've got a great armor save. So it's -1 to hit, -1 rend, and then -1 from save rolls. Rend is great when you've already got a great armor save as well, so they're going to try and hit you, and now they're not punching through your armor as well. But in my opinion, the -1 save rolls is so good because now you're making it so when you hit them, you're just lifting really defensive units. And while, yes, this isn't good into stuff like Nighthaunt, who ignore rend anyway, it's good into Slaves to Darkness, who are about to get a new book sometime soon, who also have a good armor save. And because he's a wizard, as is being pointed out in the chat, you're also going to be able to put the Purple Sun out. And the Purple Sun also reduces the armor save of an enemy unit. So now you've got Purple Sun, -1 save. This guy, -1 save, that's -2. If you've got any rend, you're now just hitting at rend 3, which is very nice. So I like that. And lastly, he's got a rampage called Soul Shaking Roar, which is done in any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat range with this guy on a 3-up. The target can't use commands for the rest of the turn, which is pretty good. Stops -1 to hit, stops all-out defense if you've already taken away their armor saves, which is good. So I like Kondis more than I like Kazai because of the utility, but I think there's a good argument for both, which is cool. Our next unit is one of the cool new models, Iridan the Witness. They are a Stormcast Eternal hero, but our first non-War Master. It's unique, so you can only have one of them, and is a priest level 1, so we can start doing prayers, which is cool. We like that. We like that. Also, it's a great model. Just want to say this. It's a great model. Okay, so priest level 1, nice. So priest level, it costs about 100 points. That's what I would put that as, same as a wizard level, so about 100 points. So we're going to try and guess the points after this. So we've got 12 health, 3-up save, no inbuilt ward save, but obviously there are ways to get ward saves on heroes. We've already discussed this. Okay, moves 12 inches. Everything in Stormcast moves 12 inches. If it doesn't move 12 inches, I don't want to know. And it's got control value 5, so you can just bop around little objectives, which is cool. A cheap priest, I love that. In combat, pretty woeful. 4 attacks, damage D3, 6 attacks, damage 2, which is genuinely fine for a hero. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that if you were taking him as a damage dealer, then you wouldn't. So he's now a hybrid piece, halfway between a support piece in being a priest and a little bit of an objective grabber and fighter. And in that role, as a hybrid, I actually really like this as a unit. It's pretty fun. Okay. Is a Ruination Chamber unit. We should talk about this. Once per turn across the army, a reaction, this unit was picked as a target of a non-core ability. You can roll a 4-up, and you will resist that ability. So you're going to be able to stop a bunch of abilities which normally might affect this unit, which is good. That's a nice little like safety net, but it's unreliable because it's a 4+. Right, it's a priest, or they're a priest, and they have their own special prayer, which is cast on a 4. It's called Prayer of the Witness, and you make a chanting roll, and if you get it off for the rest of the turn, each time a friendly Ruination Chamber uses a fight ability while it's holding within 18 inches of this unit, after that ability has been resolved, you heal D3. If the chanting roll was at 8+, you heal 3. That unit has a ward save of 6+ for the rest of the turn. Now, this is pretty nice for multiple if you're taking a ton of Ruination, if you're very theming your army around the Ruination keyword, and you're proccing a bunch of different heals, although there aren't many big multi-wound models which are Ruination keyworded. Therefore, that heal 3 is probably going to be more like a heal 1 or a heal 2. The 6-up ward save, though, is definitely nice to add on to stuff, but we know that there are loads of ways to get ward saves in this army already. So it feels a little bit additionally redundant, but not terrible. And then Iridan has also got an ability called Dark Flight, which is done once per turn at the end of any turn. You pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target and roll dice. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, then one model in the unit is slain, and this unit can immediately use the retreat ability without any mortal damage being inflicted. So charge in, do some fighting, and then at the end of the turn, eat a model and run away. Pretty good for achieving a battle tactic. Really good for grabbing objectives with that control score 5. Not necessarily going to go toe-to-toe with the big hitters in the game, but is going to be pretty quick. It's also a really nice ability to use to, finally grab an objective off your opponent when they thought that they were going to grab it. That's really good. So there's some really nice case uses for this, but all of it is just a little okay. So I'm going to say that I would want this model to be about 200 points. It's very survivable, 12 health with 3-up save. So I think there's a good argument for like 220 for a priest. It does a lot, it's a lot of busy work, but not necessarily a lot of great work. So let me know what you think of Iridan the Witness, the new war scroll, the new unit. And I guess if you're running a bunch of Ruination units, it could be quite fun. Our next priest monster dude is Ionis Cryptborn. Ionis is also a war master, so it could be a general. He's unique, so you can only have one. He's a monster, but is a priest level 2 over Iridan, and has got the fly keyword. Compared to Iridan, does slightly less damage in combat, but has a much more aggressive shooting attack, Spirit Scoring Flames, which has got shooting combat, which you really want, and has got 9 attacks, hitting on 2s, wound on 4s, with the fantastic Ren 2, damage 1. There's more to say about that shooting attack in a minute, but we're going to come back to it. So, this is also a more survivable character, like I said, with 16 health, 3-up save, access to a 5-up ward save potentially, and control value 5 and move 12, because everything moves 12 apparently. And he's also a war master in this book. He's really, really fast, and he's really good. So, what I've said about Iridan being able to pop between little objectives, grabbing stuff, fighting some people is not bad. But I think the reason that you're going to take Ionis is a 2-cast priest, which is good. So you've got access to, the teleport if you want, and also blessed weapons. Feels like a really good pick for doing blessed weapons, is because of what you're going to be able to do in output with their missile weapon. So he's got the Spirit Scoring Flames, which is 9 attacks, and then once per turn for the army in any shooting phase, you can use the Spirit Scoring Flames. Pick an enemy unit that had any damage points allocated to it, and that's an enemy unit, not any enemy unit, an enemy unit, so singular. Pick an enemy unit that had any damage points allocated to it this turn by attacks with this unit's missile weapon, basically. The target has a soul burned keyword. Then, if you move over into the Soulburned ability, in any shooting phase, this unit can use this ability even if it has been destroyed. Pick any number of Soulburned enemy units to be the targets. Roll a d3 for each target on a 2+. The inflicted amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. As was pointed out by Owen in the chat, this means any shooting phase. So, turn 1, I'm going to shoot with my missile weapon and soul burn a unit thanks to that ability. Then they're going to take D3 mortal damage. Next turn, I'm going to then use covering fire to do it on another unit. That unit is now also soul burned, and then the first unit's going to take D3 in this shooting phase, and then this unit is going to, and then it keeps stacking. And then if you eventually kill Critborn, you could have 4 or 5 units in every shooting phase taking D3 mortal damage. That is a wicked amount of damage that can potentially happen. You've got to be fairly aggressive to make it happen, but I think that's pretty fun. Very fun, especially as it's 10-inch range. So you're going to be able to move, drop from deep strike, and 22-inch strike range at the start, drop from deep strike and immediately do it. That's pretty fun. Lastly, he's also a priest, so it brings all the utility of a 2-cast priest, and a 2-cast priest is worth at least 180 points. He's got his own unique prayer, which is cast on a 5 called Lightning Tempest. Pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches of this unit to be struck by lightning, then make a chanting roll. Inflict D3 mortal damage on that unit, then roll a dice. On a 1 to 2, the sequence ends. However, on a 3+, you pick another enemy unit within 3 inches of that unit to be struck by lightning and do D3 mortal damage. If the chanting roll was a 10, you can pick another unit within 6 inches of that unit instead of 3 inches. Keep rolling dice this way until the sequence ends, or there are no other enemy units eligible to be picked. That's amazing. Like, that could potentially do a ton of mortal damage, much more effective than something like the Comet. It's a little bit harder to do, and yes, it requires a lot of dice rolls, but genuinely really, really fun. And now we've got Yannastra, super fun. This character, super fun. And I really like Critborn for 2 different reasons. 1, I think actually very effective. Number 2, actually really fun. And probably would be immediately on my pickup list, to be honest. Okay, we're moving on to my favorite character in Stormcast Eternals now, Neeve Blacktalon. I love Neeve, she's cool. And also, when you buy Neeve, points-wise, you also bring Neeve's companions and Lorai. It's a singular package, and it used to be 320 points. So the reason I love Neeve is because she has a very singular role, but she's also really, really fun, and in my opinion, very effective. She's also featured in a couple of 5-0s, or at least one 5-0 and a couple of 4-1s, in Age of Sigmar 4 already, so pretty good. But you have to really put all the bits together. Okay, so what does she do? Neeve Blacktalon is a move 7, although she has run and charge, Vanguard Chamber, melee character. She's only an infantry model, so you're going to be able to give her +1 attack thanks to blessed weapons. She's got a 3-up save and 6 health, which is not super survivable, but pretty good. She's got a relic bolt storm pistol, which is 3 attacks, 3s, render 1 damage 1. But her whirlwind axes is where the real juice is, because she's got 7 attacks, 2s and 3s, rend 2, damage 2. And she's got crit 2 hits. So on some turns, you are just going to spike really big. So you're gonna hit like a couple of 6s, maybe 3 6s, and you're gonna have loads. So rend 2, damage 2. But if you're fighting a hero, and because there are loads of heroes on the board because you need them for regiments, then you add 1 to the damage characteristic. So now we've got 7 attacks with crit 2 hits, 2s and 3s, rend 2, damage 3. I have one-shot Kondis with a one-shot Kondis with a Neeve Blacktalon before. Incredibly fun. Hitting on 2s is really good. And even if you're not going into a hero, 7 attacks with crit 2 hits that are damage 2 is pretty good at taking out a lot of other types of units. She's also got the Vanguard Chamber passive, which means this unit can shoot and or charge, even if it used a run or retreat ability in the same turn. So you've got retreat and charge, run and charge. She moves 7, so now you've got up to 13-inch move. Don't let there be a Stormcast unit that moves less than 12. So you can move really fast, and then you can do a big old charge. And lastly, she's got this ability called Wind Rider, which is really fun. In my opinion, maybe one of the most fun war scrolls in Age of Sigmar today. If this unit is in combat or charged this turn, this unit can make a pile-in move. Then if this unit is in combat, you must pick 1 more enemy units to be the targets of this unit's attacks. This basically replaces the normal attack ability, and it rewrites it a little bit. But Effectively, you make a normal attack, pick a unit, pile in, make a normal attack, and then you resolve your combat attacks like normal, then roll a dice. On a 3-up, remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 3 inches from all enemy units and wholly within the combat range of another friendly, the Black Talons unit that is not in combat, which is really nice. Yeah, she can redeploy and countercharge. That's absolutely true. She can do that. But the 3-up is really fun because you can start doing some very fun and engaging things. Countercharge is super cool.
Happy birthday. Thanks for all the awesome content.
Thank you to Dr. Demento. I am recording this during my birthday week. So thank you to Dr. Demento for the £10 donation. Thank you. Appreciate that. So you get the big counter charge off, teleport back to your unit, grab an objective, set yourself up for another run and charge. It's incredible how dynamic this unit is. In addition to Neeve, love her to pieces. You get Neve's Companions, which is a solid unit. 3 models in this unit. Each model's got 3 health with a 3-up save. They move 5 inches, so a little bit slow, and control value 1. But one of the models has got a 3 shots that are damaged to at 18 inches at in the shooting phase, which is really good. 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. Against heroes, it's got rend 2. I actually find that to be very effective. In combat, the 2 other models have got some pretty good combat attacks with 6 attacks damage 1, 4 attacks damage 2. And then they've got the Shield of Azir passive, where while any friendly the Black Talons heroes are wholly within this unit's combat range, this unit and that unit have a 5-up ward save. So this means Neeve can have a 5-up ward save, which is very cool as well. So 3-up, 5-up. And lastly, when you get the Black Talons, you also get Lorai as well. Lorai is a 1-cast Ideneth Deepkin wizard, and also has an inbuilt 5-up ward save, and does have the Black Talons keyword, so you can always teleport Neeve back to wherever Lorai is. Lorai's super good as a wizard because she's cool for being able to just cast a spell, including a manifestation. But the reason I really like her is for 2 different reasons. She's incredibly tanky. -1 to hit rolls for attacks that target this unit with 5 health, 4-up save, and a 5-up ward save. Then, in addition, she's got her own unique spell, which is Nebulous Fog, cast on a 6. If you cast it until the start of your next turn, while the Black Talons unit is wholly within 6 inches of this unit, if the unmodified hit roll for a shooting attack that targets the unit is a 1 or a 5, the attack fails. So you can only hit them on 6s. Lorai cannot use the Stormcaster spell lore. No, she cannot. So I find that super good. A very good unit if you want to be able to push this unit in front of an enemy that's going to use covering fire. They have to shoot at the closest unit. You can only hit this unit on 6s. Very good. It's a very strong ability. I say Neeve has got even better since this book has come out, because now you're going to be able to teleport Neeve thanks to the terrain piece that you've got for Stormcast Eternals. Bang your big charge, teleport back to the board, and just have this assassin teleporting around the board, which is so good. So yeah, very effective. I love Neeve. She's good. If you are playing Stormcast, either competitively or even just because you want to run around and have a good time, yeah, then in my opinion, this is the best box you can buy in Warhammer, and you'll have a good time. Our next unit is Lord Commander Bastion Kothalos. Very survivable with 8 health and a 3-up save and a 5-up ward save, but unfortunately only moves 5 inches. So he's a little bit on the slow side. Control value 2, but he is a great survivable combat character while also a massive force multiplier, and one of the first kind of dedicated support pieces like a priest that actually has some support for his army. Okay, so he's got a good combat profile, 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, damage 2, rend 2, damage 4. Obviously, we can get extra attacks on that if we want to, from Blessed Weapons. He's got a shooting attack, for some reason, 18 inches, 2 shots that do damage D3. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about his 2 abilities as force multiplier. His passive, Voice of the Thunder, each time a friendly Stormcast Eternals unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit uses all-out attack command, no command points are spent. Brilliant. Not spending command points. We love that. That's cool. That's super fun. He's also unique. I should also point that out down here, so you can only have one of them. But the reason I think you'll see Bastion taken is thanks to the Castellan of Azir ability, which is done in the deployment phase. Pick up to 3 friendly Stormcast Eternals infantry units to be the targets. Each target can use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase. So, if I would like to have some really fast units, Prosecutors are a really good example, because those are Stormcast Eternal Infantry units, you're going to be able to move them 12 inches up the board, then in your first turn move them additional 12 inches, and then charge 3d6, which is a lot. That feels like a lot. Also, this Voice of the Thunder ability, I think, is really good because each time a friendly Stormcast Eternal unit uses all-out attack. So you're basically going to save this in shooting and combat. So that's 2 CP you can spend a turn. 2 CP you can save a turn, which I think is great. Then you get the pre-game, not pre-game move, but you get this move up. It's so good, right? That's so effective. And then lastly, at the end of any turn, if any models were slain by this unit's attacks this turn, you heal 4 to this unit. So slay any models, heal 4, which is half of his life. I think that Bastion is the centerpiece of the beginning of a great army playstyle. He's not necessarily great post that initial launch, but like saving CP, being able to heal and fight, I'm rating Bastion really heavily. Like, he'd be up in an A tier for me. Let me just also point out how good Castellan of Azir is. It gets you 2 battle tactics minimum, maybe up to 4. So in the current like GHB, you've got board edges. Boom, we've got it with fast units because you need to get 2 units on the side. Like to do table quarters because you're playing as order. Got it. We'd like to do terrain in your opponent's deployment. Depends on exactly if they've got any units nearby, but we've got it. 2 units in the middle of the board. Got it. This ability unlocks 4 different battle tactics straight off the bat. It's so good. Like, very effective. Our next unique character is Vander's Hammerhand. Vanders is a melee support character. He's got an okay survivability with 8 health, 3 up save. He's slow and only moves 10 inches, which is actually fine. That's genuinely fine. He's okay in combat with 6 attacks, damage 2, and 4 attacks, damage 2. But the reason you're going to take him is twofold. One, thanks to the passive Lord of the Hammerhands. I just picturing someone with hammer hands, it's great. Add 3 to the control scores of friendly warrior chamber units while they're wholly within 12 inches. And Vengeance Unleashed, which is a reaction for you declaring a fight ability with this unit. This allows you to fight a unit of warrior chamber units, a warrior chamber unit to fight immediately after Vandus, and that unit will get +1 to its hit rolls for free. So you basically take Vandus to simultaneously charge at the same time as a unit of Warrior Chamber to give them a free all-out attack. Or you can just have Bastion and get that all-out attack for free. Fighting simultaneously is kind of okay, but don't forget, fighting simultaneously does not allow you to move up the steps of activation in combat. There are 3 steps: strike first, strike normal, and strike last. If Vanders, for some reason, is striking first, you are not able to move that other unit up a step into the strike first step, although they will be able to strike first at the normal step. I hope that made sense, and I apologize if that's too complex. But he's fine. I don't think he's great. He's whatever. So he exists, and he's there. Our next unique hero is Gardas Steel Soul, superhero landing model man. There's a picture of him if you're interested. So Gardas is an infantry support hero, and he's pretty cool. He's unique, so you can only have 1 of him, and he is also the Warrior Chamber keyword. He's got a 5-up ward save, a 3-up armor save, and 6 health. In combat, super woeful. 5 attacks, damage 2, only rend 1 with crit auto wound. So that is super disappointing. However, he does want to be in a fight. Not going to do any damage when he gets there, but he wants to be in a fight for 2 different reasons. First off, his passive, the Aura of Purity. If this unit charged this turn, for the rest of the turn, friendly Stormcast Eternal units have a 5-up ward save where they're wholly within 12 inches. That's pretty great, but also, he's going to be locked in combat because he's never going to kill anything. So hopefully those other units are going to kill the stuff that they need to kill. 5-up ward save is legit though, but he doesn't have any bonuses to charge for himself. There are no other ways to stack bonuses to charge so far that we've seen. So he's just going to be nailing a charge, and he's pretty slow at 5 inches, which is disappointing. Although obviously he could teleport and try a charge that way. But he does have this special ability once per battle in your charge phase called Saintly Assault, right? Pick up to 3 visible friendly Stormcast Eternal infantry units. This is once per battle, wholly within 6 inches of this unit to be the target. This is in your charge phase. For the rest of the turn, add 1 to charge rolls for those targets, and add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the targets. melee weapons to the target's melee weapons. Now, this is pretty good. Now, this targets Stormcast Eternal's infantry. We know we've got blessed weapons for an additional +1 attack. So if we were to build some really slow but very scary units, a good example of something like this will work really well if we want to combo some stuff. Let's take Bastion. Let's move up some infantry units up the board early. Then let's drop down Gardas. Then in the charge phase, let's give them +1 attacks and +1 to their charge rolls. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves a very solid frontline charging Alpha Strike, which is good. I'm sure also there are other units like, Annihilators when they deep strike and then they do their charge. A bunch of different options here for plus attacks, plus charges. So Gardas could see some real play as a support piece, but not, unfortunately, as a combat character because he basically fights as well as a skink. It's pretty rough. So our next unique character is Taunus the Redeemed. That's the new Stormcast Eternal wing guy with an incredible backstory, just as an FYI. He's got 8 health, a 3-up save, but does not have an inbuilt ward save. He's a unique character, so you can only have one of him, and he's also got the infantry keyword, and he's also part of the Ruination Chamber. Can't give him an artifact or a command trait or anything like that, but is okay in a fight with 5 attacks, damage 2. It's pretty rubbish, actually. I'm pretty disappointed by that. 8 health, 3-up save. Got 1 shooting attack, 12 inches, which does D3 damage. It's fine, but again, it's pretty woeful. Is a support piece, really. He's got Herald of Redemption, which is a passive. For friendly Ruination Chamber unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit uses a rally command, you receive 3 additional rally points. 3 additional rally points is wicked. It means you can immediately bring back yourself a Reclusian, as an example, in addition to however well you roll on your rally roll. Also, you can bring like 1.5 prosecutors back. That's good as well. That's a cool ability. It does mean you're constantly using a CP for a rally, and also those units can't be in combat, but that does feel okay. Like, I'm not anti that as long as it's cheap enough, like, I don't know, 150, 180 or something. But he's also got an ability called the Light of Sigmar, which is done in any combat phase. Where you roll a dice on a 3-up, you pick one of the following effects. For the rest of the turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls to attacks by enemy units while they're within combat with this unit, and then you heal D3 each friendly Stormcast Eternals unit within this unit's combat range. So if he multi-charges with other units, especially units that utilize another hero who has the command trait Shock and Awe, which is -1 to hit on a turn it deploys, and any other units that deploy with it when they deep strike from reserve using the battle trait, all those units will be -1 to hit, charge in at the same time as this guy. Now the unit you're charging in is -2 to hit. Now you can only be capped at -1, but it means even if they use all-out attack, they're still going to be -1 to hit, which is pretty good. He's also a Ruination Chamber guy, so he's going to be able to ignore a reaction. He's going to be able to ignore an ability as a reaction on a 4+, which is pretty nice. I got to ask myself whether or not he does enough. His combat is really tragic. So really, am I going to be rallying enough with those 3 additional rally points for the points that he costs? And also is a -1 to hit, and also the healing that he's going to do in combat good enough? 8 health and a 3-up save is not that tanky. That is not that survivable to be able to constantly rally and heal. So a big question is, I think I'd have to put this on the table to give it a look and see how it works. Right now, I'm verging on no, but I think it's quite a fun idea. Our next hero is not unique, so you can have multiple, though you're not going to want to even have one. Our Lord Celestin has got 6 health and a 3-up save and has got no ward save. He has got the Warrior Chamber keyword, which is good. And the reason that you are going to bring a Lord Celestin is because, like Vandus, he fights at this. Well, he lets a unit of Warrior Chamber infantry fight immediately after him, and the bonus that he gives is +1 to wound. This means that you're going to need to take the slow Lord Celestin and charge in simultaneously with an infantry unit and give that unit +1 to wound. +1 to wound is a legit good bonus, especially on infantry who we know we can get potentially up to 2 attacks from if we take the spell, blessed weapons. So that could be really good and good economies of scale, but it's going to be quite slow. You're going to have to work really hard to move into to make that happen. That's the Lord Celestin on foot. Our next non-unique, so you can take multiple, is the Lord Celestin on Dracoth. It's got 8 health, 3-up save, moves 10 inches, so nice and fast. Is pretty like medium in a combat. Obviously compare it to other combat units that you could take. and they're probably better choices for the points. The reason that you would take this guy is, I'm going to be honest with you, you're not going to take him. He's got the ability Righteous Avengers, which allows him to let a non-hero Extremist Chamber cavalry units, that's going to be all your Dracoths, fight immediately after, but doesn't impart a bonus to them when they fight within combat range. So you're probably not going to do that. Because you count multi-charging them at the same time just means they both fight at the same time. Doesn't really get you much, to be honest. He does have a passive called Extremist Chamber. Each time you make an unmodified save roll of a 6 for a combat attack, the target that targets this unit inflicts 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the fight ability has been resolved. So if you're able to stand there and tank, and you can with a bunch of heals, because you've got a heal prayer, some other heals, maybe make it so that like you can just keep doing mortal damage back to your opponent by just standing in the middle and parrying everything. But probably that's a lot of effort to do a very limited amount of damage, so probably leave this guy at home. Our next unit is a Lord Imperatant. 6 health, 3 up save, no ward save. Obviously, there are ways to protect him, get some Praetors nearby. Pretty slow, moves 5 inches. Incredibly bad in combat, which is really woeful. Anyway, why are you taking this? Oh, no, he does have a ward save. I apologize. He has a 5-up ward save from his loyal Gryph-hound, which is a passive. However, that 5-up ward save is situational. Can't just have a 5-up ward save. If the Gryph-hound is a token, the first time you make an armor save roll of a 1, which would mean that you would need to roll a ward save, then you unfortunately are going to lose that Gryph-hound and he's going to be taken. So, RIP. However, you do have this ability, once per battle in your movement phase, you're able to use the Guided by Lightning ability. Pick up to 3 friendly Stormcast Eternal units wholly within 12 inches of this unit that was set up this turn using the Scions of the Storm ability. So that's the ability to bring them in from the board edge with your battle trait. Each target can immediately move D3 inches. The targets cannot move into combat during any part of that move. That's pretty good. So a deep strike, 9 inches away, I can now move D3 inches. If I have Gardas nearby, I can have an additional +1 to my charge. So that is going to be a minimum of 2 inches. It's going to take it from 9-inch charge to a 7-inch charge, and up to a maximum of 4 inches. So going to go from a 9-inch charge to a 5-inch charge. I don't feel this is going to be very effective on your faster units, like Prosecutors as an example, but it's going to be really good on things like Annihilators, really effective on maybe some of your bigger monster models as an example. That could be quite cool. So I feel like you've got to really build into what you plan on deep striking and charging with whatever that might be. Maybe when we get to Annihilators, this will make a lot more sense. But, you know, compare him and Bastion. I think I prefer the pre-game move of Bastion because Bastion gives me battle tactics. This just gives me more effective, reliable deep strikes, but not that good. And is also just terrible in combat. I'd probably just be embarrassed to fight with him. Someone's like, oh, bro, don't forget you'll fight with your Lord Imperatant. You'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. Our next unit is a Lord Relictor. Lord Relictor is super cool because he's got 6 health, 3 up save, and is a level 1 priest. And as has been pointed out in the chat, thanks to his passive, Mortis Priest, where he adds +1 to his chanting roll, that's a much more effective bonus than +1 to cast because you're only rolling a single d6 to attempt to do prayers. So that makes him a very good priest. He's got a woeful combat profile, but does have crit auto wound, which is fun. So survivable support character, should probably come in around 120, 140 points, about that. It's pretty thin on style. I mean, the model is absolutely the business. So good. But, you know, as long as he is, someone saying he's 130 points, might be, we don't know right now, we don't know the points exactly. You know, that's a good support character if you need him in that role. If you're like, normally when you're looking for a wizard in an army, like I need at least a wizard to try and stop spells, try and cast an incarnate. You might need a priest for just an attempt to do a spell. Prayer, sorry. Our next unit is the Knight Arcanum. He's a level 1 wizard, 6 health, 3 up save, pretty slow, move 5. And he's obviously terrible in combat because he's a Stormcast hero chosen from all the mighty heroes to battle against all of the forces of chaos and destruction and death, 3 attacks. However, the reason that you are taking the Knight Arcanum, apart from being a dope model, is because of the passive Indomitable Law Seekers. He is a wizard. Great. That's already worth 100 points. And in addition, you add 1 to casting rolls to this unit when it uses a summon ability. Which is good. That means the manifestations. And as I've said, manifestations, at least at time of recording, are very, very impactful. Therefore, +1 to cast with them is big thumb. Level 1 wizard, cast an incarnate as an example, because you might not have a lot of other casts. That's great. He's also got +1 to banishment rolls for this unit, which is also good. He's got each manifestation cannot pass through or end any move within this unit's combat range unless they started that move within this unit's combat range. So he's not going to be able to be charged by enemy manifestations, which is good. He's got a 4-up ward save against any mortal damage caused by manifestations, which is cool as well. Yeah, I do like the idea of putting him on a dais. That's a great shout. So the manifestation that you get for Stormcast Eternals, taking him up to a power level 2 wizard, bombing around and just having fun. So yeah, like as a cheap wizard, hopefully he's only like 120 points, kind of plays into the manifestation game a little bit, which is kind of cool. But apart from that, he's the same as any other wizard. But, you know, other wizards have got a load of other abilities as well, so it's fine. Our next unit is a Knight Judicator. It's not a support unit. Instead, it is just a solo missile weapon platform. 6 health with a 3-up save, no ward save, but obviously ways to get that. The reason that you're going to take him because you want to do 3 shots at damage 3 at 18 inches and move 6, so 24-inch effective range, thanks to the Terminus Greatbow. It's hits on 3s, wounds on 3s, Rend 2 damage 3, so it's legit as kind of a gun platform, to be honest. Not good in combat, but he does have a way to improve that output thanks to the Gryph-hounds, which is a complicated way of being able to increase the effectiveness of this unit. What you do is when you deploy this unit, you set up 2 Gryph-hounds, they're tokens. If this unit was not set up this turn, and if you have any Gryph-hounds that are still on the battlefield, roll a dice on a 1. Unfortunately, one of the Gryph-hounds runs away. However, if you roll a 2, pick one of this unit's Gryph-hounds is next to this unit or next to an enemy unit and place it next to the target instead. So you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches. So yeah, you want to be shooting at 24 inches or 18 inches. But in order to be able to get your bonus, you need to be within 12 inches. Roll a 2 up, put a Gryph-hound next to it. You get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. Only with this shooting unit. If it was, you got +1 to hit and +1 to wound for multiple shooting units, I'd be a little bit more impressed. But unfortunately, I don't see it. So this guy is a pure damage dealer, a pretty weak damage dealer at range that doesn't impact the rest of your army. Probably leave this guy at home. So our other priest, or one of our other priests, is a Knight Relictor, not the same as a Lord Relictor. Lord Relictor gets +1 to its chanting. A Knight Relictor gets is still a level 1 priest, so you know, around 120 points, 100 points for this guy. Terrible in combat, only 3 attacks, not even crit auto wound. Survivability is fine, 6 health, 3-up save, move 5. So as a support piece, fine, very classic. However, he's got a pretty good ability in your shooting phase. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. So he's going to be able to move and then use the ability, and also run and use the ability as well. So could get quite far. Roll a dice on a 2+, subtract 1 from ward rolls made for the target for the rest of the turn. Like, I can see that actually being better than the Lord Relictor. Lord Relictor sure gets +1 to chant, but I can run up the board. If I'm running Kondis, -1 to your save roll, cast a Purple Sun, -2 to your save roll. This guy is then being 2+, -1 to your ward roll. You're taking units that have got a 3-up, 5-up to a 5-up, 6-up. Like, that's pretty effective, in my opinion. I really like that. I like this guy. I probably would take the Knight Relictor over the Lord Relictor. I think that's a hot take in the Stormcast Eternals community, but there we go. Our next unit is the Knight Vexilla. I always get told off for that. A Knight Vexilla, and is a support piece for your Stormcast army, specifically your dragons. That's important. So you've got 6 health, 3-up save, no ward save. Way to improve that. He's terrible in combat. Not even auto wound for some reason. However, the reason you're taking him is because you want to stack a lot of heals on your big multi-wound models. Let's talk about it. He's got the banner of the Reforged used in any hero phase. Pick D3 friendly Stormcast Eternal units wholly within 24 inches. That's not, within 12 inches. 24 would be great. Wholly within 12 inches. Obviously, though, this does give him a big 24-inch bubble, I guess. But you have to be wholly within, and he's very slow, and your dragon's very fast. I'm glad. And then you add 3 to each target's control score for the rest of the turn. That's not necessarily the big deal. The big deal is, in addition, you heal D3. And this is in any hero phase. So if you're next to 2 big dragons, you can just be like, 2d3, well, d3 to each, next hero phase, d3. I don't know why they're stood there. They should be out there fighting or doing something, but they're stood next to you. I guess with the teleport from the Portaloo, and also with, other ways to get this guy around, there's maybe an option to drop on to places a little bit better for the heal. He's probably cheap. It's hard, cheap units are actually quite hard to find in Stormcast. He's good for building into regiments. I'm sure there's everyone in the Stormcast community. Let me know in the comments below. This is one where I'm like, no, but everyone in the Stormcast community says yay. So let me know what you think in the comments, because this one, you can't sell me on it, but I think people love it. The next unit is a Knight Quester. New model. Very cool. It's got 6 health, 3 up save. Doesn't have a ward save, but there is a way to give him one, because in the deployment phase, 2 things will happen. One, you'll question why you brought this model. But number 2, you are able to use the Ordained Quest, where you can pick an objective wholly outside friendly territory. That objective is considered to be quest marked. What happens, Rob? Well, his will be done as a passive. While this unit is contesting a quest-marked objective, you can add 3 to this unit's control score, and this unit gains a 5 at ward save. So you could deep strike this guy onto an objective outside of your territory. This guy will then become a fairly competent medium unit that does no damage in combat, but can hold an objective at 5. And in addition, he can fight simultaneously with a unit of Quester Soulsworn, or can fight simultaneously with them. He fights first, they fight next, as long as they're in combat range of each other, thanks to Heroic Retribution. However, pretty importantly, he doesn't give any bonuses like +1 to hit or +1 attack or anything like that. So he probably just is rubbish, but it's got a cool bit of story to him. So he's fun, but not cool or good. Or cool. Now, normally, when we get to the Lord Celestial and Stardrake, I'm underwhelmed. But actually, I'm incredibly whelmed by the Lord Celestial and Stardrake. He is a combat monster, obviously, but also a pretty good support character for your extremist units. Let's talk about it. 18 health with a 3 up save. No ward save, but we know ways that we can get a ward save for our heroes. He has got... he's also not unique, so you can take multiple of them. Pretty cool. But in addition, you can also give him a command trait. Can I interest you in once per battle, strike first? That's pretty fun. Deep strike can be -1 to hit. That's fun as well. And you can also give him an artifact. So I like that. So as a base, pretty nice. In the support role, he's got a really cool ability called Lord of the Host, which is once per battle, where you add 1 to the attack characteristic of other friendly extremist chamber units, which would be dragons and Dracoths, within 12 inches of this unit for the rest of the turn. Pretty nice. +1 to the attack characteristic is very good, especially on the charge. Those units normally be pretty aggressive. In combat, pretty good. 5 attacks, damage 2, which is lame, obviously, for the rider, with the weapons of legend. 5 attacks, damage 2. But the Stardrake's Cavernous Jaws is 7 attacks, damage 3. It's not necessarily as good as some of the really good combat monsters that are out there in the game, but it's reliable at least, and it is okay. The weapon of legend being only Ren 1 is pretty lol. However, the Rain of Stars shooting attack is 24-inch range, great. 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, Ren 2, damage 2. So you can really pick off some units or, kill those last couple of models on an objective. He's control value 5, so run around. 18 health, 3 up save. Move 12, we're back to that, which is pretty good, but probably maybe the best, not the best reason, but a great reason to take this guy is because of Cavernous Jaws, which is your rampage. Pick an enemy unit in combat this unit, roll 3 dice. For each roll that equals or exceeds the target's health characteristic, 1 model in the target unit is slain. You could kill 3 6 health models out of an enemy unit because you could equal 6 health, which is pretty legit. You're probably not going to, but you could try and roll it, which is pretty fun. I think this is not bad. I think it's not bad at all. That is probably that really upgrades that combat profile. You put them into the right units, people are going to be really scared of just getting multi-wound models just eaten out. Apologize for saying that. Being eaten out of the unit. And then he's also got a passive called Extremist Chamber, where each time you make an unmodified save roll of a 6 for a combat attack that targets unit, inflict a mortal damage back. I'm not really that whelmed by that ability, but that will come in as a bonus. So overall, I really rate the Lord Celestial on Star Drake. Fast, hitty, improves extremist units, can just mulch monsters by eating them, which I really like. That Cavernous Jaws, unfortunately, is only once per turn for the army, so multiple of them isn't going to work. But yeah, I like him. I think he's really good. Our next hero dragon is a Drake Sworn Templar. Isn't unique, so like the other Star Drake, you are going to be able to give him artifacts and traits and stuff. 18 health, 3-up save, move 12, control value 5, all good stuff that I talked about previously. Doesn't have a ward save, can get a ward save, isn't a wizard or a priest, is probably very expensive. Star Drakes and the Drake Sworn Templar have always been overcosted, in my opinion. But that 12-inch move is excellent, and can, in his very specific niche, as has been pointed out in the chat, can really excel. So he's got Rain of Star shooting attack and an incredibly embarrassing 2 shots damage 1 with a Skyball bow. But in combat, it's got a Templar weapon, which is anti-hero +1 rend, anti-monster +1 rend. Those would actually stack if you were fighting a hero monster to be rend 3, making his woeful 5 attacks damage 2 for a Stormcast actually kind of like, oh, rend 3. Not bad. And in Star Drake's Cavernous Jaws are 7 attacks damage 3, like we saw with the other Star Drake. However, he's got a pretty cool monstrous rampage, which targets monsters specifically. You, once per turn across the army, you pick an enemy monster in combat with this unit, roll a dice on a 2+. For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to the damage characteristic of the Star Drake's Cavernous Jaws. So now we've got 7 attacks damage 4. I'll take that at Rend 2. And then if it's a hero, you add 1 to the damage of the Templar weapon. So that's going to be 5 attacks, damage 3. And then he's got a passive, the Extremist Chamber, where if you roll any 6s, they take a mortal damage. Any 6s are saved, they take a mortal damage after the fight abilities. So obviously, like, this unit is fighting for its place in the anti-monster role against Yannastra. So really you got to ask yourself, which one would you prefer? This guy is, I guess, in quotation marks, more survivable with more health and a better armor save. I feel like Yannastra is better because of the 3d6 charge and the ability to be on a smaller base and get into places, which is good. But, you know, they kind of fulfill the similar role. Yannastra's probably going to end up being much cheaper than the Drake Sworn Templar. So you'll have to ask me, you have to let me know what you think and which one you prefer. But I think I prefer Yannastra in the role, but the Templar's pretty fun. So the next unit we'll look at is the Knight Draconis. This is the hero Stormdrake Guard. He's got 11 health and a 3-up save and moves the traditional Stormcast Eternals 12 inches. Control value 5, but unlike the other Stormcast, isn't a War Master. And he's also part of the Extremist Chamber, which means we know we can buff also units from our Star Drake can buff Extremist Chamber units. So that's pretty nice. In combat is not brilliant. 5 attacks, damage 2 from the Rider, 4 attacks, damage 2 from the Dragon. And then the Draconic Flame Stream, which is a shooting attack, is 4 attacks, damage 1. All of these are Rend 2, which is pretty impressive. And obviously, if you combo them with Kondis, and he casts a spell for -1 save, then Rend 3, Purple Sun, Rend 4, you can be punching through armor saves like there's no tomorrow, as long as the most dominant army in the game doesn't ignore Rend. So he's also got a bunch of abilities called, first one is called Arcane Heritage, which is a reaction to your opponent declaring a spell ability. If this unit or a friendly Stormdrake Guard unit holding within 12 inches of this unit was picked to be the target of a spell, roll a dice on a 4+, ignore the effect of that spell on this unit or that friendly unit. This unit can only use this ability more than once per phase, but only once per spell ability. So 4-up spell ignore is legit. Like, honestly legit. So I don't think that's bad at all. It's got the Extremist Chamber passive, where any 6s to save are going to cause a mortal damage. And then lastly, once per turn for the army in any combat phase, pick a friendly Stormdrake Guard unit within this unit's combat range to be the target. Roll a dice on a 2+, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of both this unit and the target's Draconith Fangs and Talons for the rest of the turn. Now, let's go and look at what we're going to be able to do with our Stormdrake Guard, because we've got the War Scroll here, so we might as well talk it through. Stormdrake Guard is a unit of 2 models. Each model in the unit has got 9 health and a 3-up armor save, but no ward save. And it's got moves 12 inches, which is really great. Really, really great. I don't think I've said how good that is, but it's really good. And control value 5 per model. So that's a unit of That's control value of 10, which is absolutely wicked. Now, each model in the unit has also got the Draconic Flame Stream, so you're going to have 8 shots at 10 inches, 2s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 1. That's pretty good. You can also reinforce this to a unit of 4. So it's going to be 16 shots, 2s, 3s, Rend 2, damage 1 at 22-inch range. That's honestly a legit profile. Like, very, very legit. Now, you can choose between 2 different weapon profiles in the Drake Rider's Warblade or the Drake Rider's Lance. I feel like the Lance is probably what you're more going for, where it's got 3 attacks per model, so 6 over a unit of 2, 12 with 13 for the champion over a unit of 4. 3s and 3s, only Rend 1, but Rend 2 against infantry, and then damage 2 on the charge. So that's pretty good, seeing as you can get +1 attack from the Knight Draconis and also +1 attack from the Star Drake, which I know, before you say it in the comments, is 1,500 points or whatever it is. You could absolutely, you can have 5 attacks, 20 attacks over a unit of 4, 21 attacks with the champion, 21 attacks, damage 2 with the Drake Rider's Lance, and then because of the Draconic Fangs and Talons, you can end up with like 5 attacks, damage 2. If you use the upgrade, which is pretty good as well, from the Knight Draconis. Also got a couple of different abilities. You get Disperse Formation passive, where the unit has a coherency range of 2, which is good because you've got those big silly wings. Got the Extremist Chamber passive, where any 6s to save are going to cause a mortal back. And genuinely, that might end up working over time. And then finally, you got Draconic Onslaught. Draconic Onslaught, which once per turn in any combat phase, if this unit charges turn, roll a dice on a 3+, this unit can move 2d6 inches. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units and can end that move in combat. Then pick an enemy unit in the that this unit passed across and inflict d3 mortal damage. So a unit of 4, move 12 inches up the board, they charge, they move an additional 2d6 inches, they're somewhere where you don't expect them to be, and they're murdering stuff. And then as you start hitting them back, they start giving you mortal wounds. Now, you don't have a retreat and charge mechanic, which is sad. You don't have... if you were able to get a Knight Relictor nearby, you would be able to teleport them. I think the teleport is any Stormcast unit, so you could teleport them away. But the move ability is really effective. Very, very effective. And yes, all the combos maybe aren't very good. And also, unfortunately, Games Workshop doesn't really understand scale. So while the Drake Rider's Lance, which is 3 attacks over 2 models, so 6, you see this a lot with Agrodons having like 3 attacks for Seraphon, over 3 models, so 9 models for the unit. But the Skink Riders having 3 attacks, but 5 models, so you have 15 attacks that are damage 2 across the unit. Games Workshop hasn't really understood that they probably need to scale the number of attacks for the number of models that are in the unit, which is a little bit disappointing. But I think the Storm Drake Guard could be very, very good. You're charging, you're moving, you could power through. That's a great point in the chat. You've got a lot of shots from a reinforced unit. They have shooting combat. They're very survivable. You can give them a ward save. I think that these are not bad at all. Not bad at all. Our next unit is the Lord Aquila. Now, he's a really fast combat unit that also helps your Paladors do teleporting around the board. He's got 8 health with a 3-up save. That move 14, I said, like very effective. Control value 2. Pretty woeful in combat. So I wouldn't necessarily describe him as a combat character. He's got a couple of abilities. He's got Vanguard Chamber, which allows this unit to use shoot and or charge abilities, even if it uses run or retreat, which is disappointing because I probably don't want to run, I don't want to charge or shoot with this guy, to be honest. But maybe if I consider him to be a really cheap battle tactic objective grabber that unlocks a regiment allowing me to take Paladors, that makes him something I could make a tough pill to swallow, but maybe I'll swallow it. In your movement phase, you can ride the winds etheric, which is an ability this unit has. If this unit is not in combat, you can pick up to 2 friendly Vanguard Palador units that are not in combat to be the targets. Remove this unit and the targets, if any, from the battlefield. Set up this unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units and set up each target wholly within 12. So you can do this in each movement phase. So, you know, teleport somewhere else, which is kind of okay because you're going to want to do battle tactics. I would argue that at some point, if you're teleporting Paladors, you're going to want to charge with those units and do some fighting, do some work. So I think that's something you're going to need to do. I don't really see what the purpose of this unit is. Maybe in the comments you could let me know, but I'm not really sold here. So that's a no from me. The next hero is the non-named version of Iandin or Illidan or whatever his name was, or their name was. Lord Vigilant on Morgriff. 12 health with a 3-up save and control value of 5 and move 12 makes this a good unit for running around the board edges, grabbing objectives, and fighting small little units. Not a bad combat profile. I know I've been laughing at 5 attacks damage 2, but on the charge, 5 attacks damage 3. 50% increase in output, we'll take it. And then the Morgriff does more damage than the dragons that the Knight Draconis rides on or the Stormdrake Guard with 6 attacks, damage 2 versus 4 attacks, damage 2. So it's legit more output than those. Moves 12 inches, great. Doesn't have the fly keyword, I don't think. Oh, it does have the fly keyword. It's actually nice as well. It's also a Ruination unit, so it's got that ability that when you're chosen as the target of a non-core ability on a 4-up, you can ignore it. Also has got this ability Direct Assault that you do in your hero phase where you pick a friendly non-hero Ruination Chamber unit. The effect is for the rest of the turn, while that target is wholly within 12 inches of this unit, which is a double stipulation, you add 5 to the target's control score, which is pretty... You're doing a lot to not do a lot. And lastly, he's got a rampage called Vice-like Grip, which is done in any charge phase. You pick an enemy non-monster hero. So just imagine in a mirror match, the powerful Lord Relictor. Roll 2d6. If the result exceeds the target's health characteristic, then that unit strikes last. Okay. And the target can be picked to use commands. Unfortunately, I can't really see a use case where I need to bring this character to fight non-hero monsters, mainly because, or non-monster heroes, mainly because Games Workshop doesn't make them very scary. Sigval's a good example of one maybe I'd be scared of. Yannastra's a good example as well. That would be pretty good to make them strike last, not pick commands. But in combat, this probably would do okay in combat. If this is cheap enough, like cheap, like 180, 160, maybe I could see a use for it. But other than that, he doesn't really bring a lot to the army. So unfortunately, it's not super good for me, but I think there might be a case maybe you could take it. The next unit we'll look at is the Knight of Zeros, which is the other build for our new kind of winged lord. So 6 health with a 3-up save, moves 12 inches, is very bad in combat, but has got a couple of abilities that maybe is worth taking, specifically if you're running lots of prosecutors. Is a Ruination Chamber unit, so it's got that 4+ ignore against non-core abilities, and then has got this Light of Sigmar ability, which is done in any combat phase, which does mean every combat phase. Roll a dice on a 3-up, pick one of the following effects. For the rest of the turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they're in combat with this unit, and then heal D3 for each friendly Stormcast Eternals unit within this unit's combat range. Don't forget, you don't have to be in combat to be able to do the heal. So basically, it's a 3-up heal D3 in every combat phase if you're next to one of your buddies. If you are in combat, then in every combat phase, it's potentially making units -1 to hit, which is a massive god tier debuff. Especially as sometimes you're casting spells to make that happen. It's pretty good, to be honest. It's not reliable because it's a 3+, but it is every combat phase. That feels nice. And then we have the Light and the Dark ability, which is done once per turn for the army at the end of any turn. You pick a friendly prosecutor's unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. You roll a dice on a 3-up, pick one of the following effects. If the target is in combat, the target can immediately use the retreat ability without any mortal damage, which is good because prosecutors don't have a lot of life. And if the target is not in combat, you can immediately make a normal move. This feels like you can build some really... Prosecutors also have a 3d6 charge. So you're setting yourself up either for a really great counter charge in the next turn or for a really good charge, because prosecutors also get plus damage on the charge. And I tend to find, having used them a bit, the prosecutors can sometimes get stuck in combat. So being able to get them out is good. I don't think this guy is particularly amazing, but I think if you are running a lot of prosecutors or plan to, I don't think I think he's at least worth trying out and seeing if it works, which I think is good, but doesn't bring any other support to the army like a wizard or a priest. So it's only really good if you're running those prosecutors. Our next unit is the guy from the launch box, Age of Sigmar 4 launch box, the Lord Vigilant on Gryffstalker. Now, you probably seem a little bit underwhelming, but I actually kind of vibing on this. So we've got 12-inch move, 8 health, 3 up save, no ward save, and is just abysmal in combat. Now he's got the Ruination Chamber ability to ignore a non-core ability on a 4+ once per turn across the army. But the reason I think I would like to try this guy out, he's probably too expensive. I want him to be like 160 or something, especially having just reviewed Skaven, where they can get strike twice on multiple units, or loads of different units in the game just have strike twice anyway. Once per battle, which I know is a tough sell, and I know a lot of people are criticizing me, but once per battle, you can use in any combat phase, Deliver Judgment. Pick a friendly non-hero Ruination Chamber unit holding within 12. The target can use 2 fight abilities this phase after the first is used. However, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn. Now, it's probably not worth it. It's probably just worth taking another unit to fight with. But when we get to it, when you can get to the strike first stuff, the strike last stuff, you've got the ability to give additional attacks to infantry. So either your Reclusians or your prosecutors are going to be able to get plus attacks from blessed weapons. If you were to go and bring in the superhero Stormcast landing guy, I forgot his name right now, then he is got a +1 attacks to infantry as well. So, you could really stack this up. Is it perfect? No. Is it great? Probably also no. But you can build a big wombo combo, and I think that could be fun. Next up, the Lord Terminus. Probably one of the most quintessentially important narrative models and units in the Stormcast Eternal roster, being the end point of when Stormcast Eternal's continuous aeon-long battle between fighting and dying and being reforging, eventually facing a Lord Terminus as you've powered through the Ruination Chamber, has got 4 attacks that are damage 3, which is a little bit better than most combat units. However, apart from that, I play about 80 points for this guy. He has got the ability to ignore non-core abilities on a 4+, and has got a passive thanks to his Memoriam, where his Memoriam is a token, and you add 3 to the control scores of friendly Ruination Chamber units wholly within 12 inches if they're on the battlefield. However, the first time you make a save roll of a 1 from an attack ability, then you're going to remove that model from the board. It should be the last time you roll, it should be your last wound, the Memoriam dies instead. And I feel really sad for Stormcast Eternals. It's the first time you roll a 1. However, you do have an ability, which might be the reason you take him, which is you declare a fight ability for this unit. You earn an honorable death. So you fight with this unit, and then you can pick a non-hero Ruination Chamber infantry unit. A lot of stipulations there. That's not used a fight ability and is within combat range. You can fight at the same time as this unit, and that unit gets +1 to hit. But obviously, if you wanted to, you could take the once per battle artifact that gives that unit gives this guy strike first. Then that unit might be able to strike first in the next step, not necessarily in the strike first step, obviously, but probably just take more models than this guy, which is sad because I think this model looks incredible. Also, on the front cover of the core rulebook. That's how important this guy is. Super important. Probably never see him. Our next unit, and one of my favorite models Games Workshop have ever released is the Lord Veritan. Absolutely sick model. 6 health, 3 up save. Is a support combat character because he is a priest, a level 1 power level priest. And priest is useful because you can maybe do a teleport or do blessed weapons, which is good, but probably take Ionis. And he also can, thankfully, also do an unbind like a wizard. So kind of a little bit better than the other priests, to be honest. I think I still like the priest that reduces the ward save down the most, just saying. But his passive does let him unbind spells like a wizard. He's also Ruination Chamber, so can ignore non-core abilities on a 4+. And then he's got his passive Sense Unholy Sorcery, where this unit's Griff Crow is a token. Subtract 1 from casting rolls and chanting rolls for enemy units within 12 inches. However, if you make an unmodified save roll for a 1 for this unit the first time, ever you roll a 1 to save on your 3-up armor save, then unfortunately that guy is going to go and you will lose your token. So I do like the idea that he could also unbind and also be a priest. Pretty good. Also, by the way, his Staff of Abjuration has got more damage than the Weapon of Legends carried by the guy riding on a Stormdrake. Pretty fun. And actually most Stormcast heroes, which is cool. And then he's also got a Judgment Blade, which is anti-rend priest and anti-rend wizard, and D3 damage, which is pretty fun. So actually not bad. If he's like 100 points and you're picking your priest that you want to choose at this point, and maybe he is the Veritan that you want. So would you believe it, we've actually moved past heroes, and now we're just going to start looking at units that you can take in your Stormcast Eternals army. The first one we're going to start with is my favorite, Annihilators. And there are 2 types of Annihilators. There's one with a shield, and they interestingly have a different profile to the ones with big old hammers. So the Annihilators with shields, as a unit of 3, reinforceable up to a unit of 6. They've got 3 health each with a 2-up save. And obviously that would mean 9 health or 18 health on a 2-up save. The potential to get ward saves is pretty nice as well. In combat, they're not bad. With 3 attacks each, champion is going to be an additional attack, so either 10 attacks or 19 attacks if you reinforce them. Rend 1, damage 2, which is pretty much the same as 5 Stormcast Eternal Heroes, or 4 Stormcast Eternal Heroes. So, a good defensive unit, and they're kind of fun for holding an objective thanks to their Brace for Impact ability. In fact, I should talk about both of the 2 Annihilator variants at the moment. The Blazing Impact ability, which both of them have, what you do in your movement phase, if this unit was set up using your Allegiance ability, the Signs of the Storm, you pick up to 3 enemy units within 10 inches, you roll a d3, and for each unit on a 2+, you inflict that much more damage. Both units have it. This ability encourages you to play multiple small units, or MSU, because it's not locked to only once per army. That means if I drop down 5 units, then I could potentially hit up to 15 units with mortal damage. There probably isn't going to be that many units, but you can do this. And as someone who's played with this list, it actually ends up being quite a lot of mortal damage, which is pretty good. So that's good. And then for the shield guys, what you get is an ability in the charge phase where you pick an enemy unit that charges turn, you roll a dice for each one on this unit, and a roll of a 6, the target has a strike last effect, which is pretty good if you're trying to build like a defensive line. Pretty good if you're trying to build a defensive line. However, the Meteoric Grandhammers that you get for the Annihilated Grandhammers, they have a worse save, only a 3-up save, but still 3 models, reinforceable to a 6. But these guys absolutely hammer, excuse the pun, because a unit of 3 is going to have 10 attacks, unit 6 is going to have 19 attacks, but they're hitting on 3s, winning on 2s, rend 2, damage 3. Now we know that we've got the potential to get plus attacks on infantry thanks to blessed weapons. Also, thanks to, I keep forgetting his name, the superhero land guy can potentially also add +1 attack to some unit as well. So 5 attacks per model, 31 attacks from a unit of 6, damage 3 is pretty wild. 2s and 2s, because you're not all out attack them. Rend 2, damage 3. If you were to have Kondis nearby, doing a purple sun and also his own unique war spell, that could be easily up to rend 4, which is pretty nutty. In addition, in any charge phase, you can use the Force of a Falling Star, where if this unit charges phase and the unmodified charge roll was an 8 or more, you pick an enemy unit within an inch, that target has strike last. Now, we know we can get +1 to charge from, again, the guy that gives the plus attacks out. I forgot his name, but that's only once per battle. But strike last is great. That's pretty fun. So I quite like that. And then in addition, you can't fight twice with these guys, which is really sad. But I think that's not bad as well. +1 to charge, arrive from deep strike. I think these are very, very cool. But we're going to talk about the Army of Renown in a bit, where these might be even better. But I can see Annihilators with Grandhammers being a thing people want to take. Okay, probably the MVP from this book, or in my opinion, this is probably the AS kind of like unit in the book, is the Storm Coven. So this was an Underworld's warband. It's a unit of 3 models. I think I've got that right. Each model's got 3 health with a 3-up save, and they move 5 inches and control value of 1. I know what you're going to say to yourself, Rob, this doesn't sound cool. Well, this unit, which isn't a hero, is a wizard. Pretty fun. Right, so it's a level 1 wizard, which is great. And that means it's a 9 health wizard with a 3-up save. Pretty good. In addition, they've got a passive called Gather the Aether, where you add one to this unit's power level while it's contesting an objective. So now it's a 2-cast wizard, which is very nice to have in your army. And you've got some I think you've got some pretty good spells in your army, especially charge on 1d6, I particularly like, but it also means they're going to be able to involve themselves in the manifestation game, which is pretty cool. But thankfully, they've also got an absolutely 11 out of 10 spell called Thundershock, which is cast on a 7. Pick a visible unit within 12 inches of the caster to be the target, then make a casting roll of 2d6. If the target is a friendly unit, it's within 12 inches, not wholly within 12 inches. If the target is a friendly unit, it has strike first for the rest of the turn. If the target is an enemy unit, it has strike last for the rest of the turn. Now, what's great about this is it's in your hero phase. So what I can do is I can pick a unit, I can give them strike first, I can make them move up the board, I can charge, and that unit has strike first. That's amazing. What I can actually do if I want to is I can give a unit strike first, I can teleport it through my Portaloo, my terrain piece 9 inches away. If it's got good charge bonuses, as an example, prosecutors, then that's really solid as well. If the enemy gets too close to the objective, make them strike last. You can cast this in your opponent's turn, and then you've got strike first on your unit in your opponent's turn. That's great as well. So it's just an amazing spell, but it means they can do an amazing spell and also do one of your lore spells or also a manifestation, which is really great. They're also a unit that if it dies, unlike your other wizards, other heroes, you can use that once per battle trait ability to bring 2 models from this unit back. And then lastly, they've got 6 shots at 18 inches, thanks to their Razorite bolts, which do D3 damage. And then they've got 9 attacks that do D3 damage. So if you thought about that as a 9 health, 3-up save, 9 attack in combat, 6 attack shooting, power level 2 wizard, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, pretty effective, and probably you'll see it taken in most Stormcast armies. So the next unit is the Quest of Soulsworn. So this will be one of the Warcry warbands, which means it's a unit of 6 models, but they're not reinforceable. But they're not unique either, so you can take multiple versions of them, and they're genuinely amazing. So let's talk about why they're so good. So 6 models have got 3 health each with a 3-up save. So immediately we've got 18 health on a 3-up save. So it's the same as a Star Drake. To give you some kind of example. They only move 5 inches though, and each model in the unit is control value of 1. So we've got a control value of 6. So they're not necessarily great. There's 3 attacks per model from the unit. So that is going to be 18 attacks. Is there a champion yet? 19 attacks, damage 2. And we know with blessed weapons, we could take that up to 25 attacks, damage 2, which is pretty good. I'll take that, especially with how survivable they are. Also, in the deployment phase, they are able to use the Ordained Quest ability. You pick an objective wholly outside friendly territory. That objective is considered to be quest marked. And thanks to the passive His Will Be Done, while this unit is contesting a quest marked objective, gains a 5-up ward save and +3 to its control score. So 18 health on a 3-up, 5-up that's rallyable is very solid for holding an objective with a control score of 9. Now, one of the problematic things about this is choosing a objective wholly outside your territory is actually going to be difficult to do because in some cases those objectives won't be there. For instance, if you're playing the Vice or Star Strike or a bunch of other missions, I think some of those are going to not have objectives outside your territory. But most missions will, but that is going to be something to talk about. They've also got the ability to teleport around with a Night Quester, but he's rubbish, so you can just ignore that, which is fine. Honestly, a legit unit. We know infantry can be good. There's lots of bonuses to infantry in this book. You can pump this unit up pretty aggressively. It's a shame you can't reinforce it, but if you could reinforce it, it'd be bananas. But yeah, very nice. Strike first if you want to give them strike first. Very cool unit, and you're probably going to want to pick some of these up. Right. One of the most popular units in all of Stormcast is Vanguard Raptors long-track crossbows. These are your long-range missile troops. They have got 3 models in the unit, reinforceable up to unit 6. Only 2 health per model with a 3-up armor save. But I think a lot of people will consider these to be super good, especially with the command ability to be able to shoot in your opponent's turn. Makes these super effective. Their bows are 18 inches and they move 5 inches. That's 23-inch range. They also have the passive Vanguard Chamber, where this unit can use shoot and or charge abilities, even if it used run or retreat ability in the same turn. So you got run, you got shoot, which is insane. I don't know why, but you have. So these guys can go really far. Then you can reinforce them up to unit 6. This is going to mean that you've got 13 shots at 18 inches, but obviously with all the moving and running as well. 3s and 3s, Ren 2, damage 2. All out attack, obviously better. And a lot of people are taking these in the Honor Guard, giving them +1 to hit, +1 to wound against units in the General's Regiment and the other Honor Guard unit, or the General and the Honor Guard unit. But that's been much reduced to only being able to put that within 12 inches. So yeah, these are great. You can teleport them. You can Bastion pregame move them. You can make them be all over the board, which is pretty nice. You know, like make it so your opponent has to run towards your piece of terrain to try to get at them, and then you just teleport them anywhere else on the board. Very effective. In addition, they've got in your shooting phase, this unit has not used a move ability this turn and was not set up. For the rest of the turn, you can ignore the guarded hero ability. These are probably, even with a 10-point increase, if that's what it ends up being, probably an auto include, just because of how they're able to control sections of the board. Ren 2 is excellent, especially combo with Kondis for an additional -1 save. That's really good. So yeah, they're just super solid. Also, you've got Aether Wings. Aether Wing is a unit of 3. They are beasts. Each model of the unit has got 2 health with a 6-up save. They move 14 inches, though, which is nice. They're rubbish in combat, and they're bad at controlling objectives. But they do have an ability, thanks to Mark for the Destruction, which is passive, where you add 1 to hit rolls for shooting attacks made by friendly Vanguard Chamber units while within 9 inches of this unit. I quite like, I don't hate the Aether Wings because of their ability to just do battle tactics. You need something fast that's going to do this. You do have loads of fast units in this book, but they're cheap. Getting cheap units in this book is hard, so there might be a reason you take them. I should also point out, obviously, that you also get anti-hero +1 rend against +1 rend for your long strikes, just going back to that. So like you can get a ton of rend is what I'm trying to say on the long strikes, like ridiculous. So they're a real threat to monsters, like Grit and Clean ones, Lords of Change, Archeons, all sorts of stuff. They're a legitimate threat. So they're probably always going to be in the list. Our next unit is Vanguard Raptors with Hurricane Crossbows. So these are always fighting against long strikes. But actually, I got a pitch for you about these being good. So they have got 2 health. It's a unit of 3. Each model has got 2 health. And they've got a 3-up save. Reinforceable to a unit of 6, which is important. They move 5. And like the other Vanguard Raptors, they can run and still shoot. And retreat and shoot as well, which is really nice. They've also got a coordinated strike ability where you pick an enemy that had any damage points allocated by Hurricane Crossbows to be the target. This is a passive. Add 1 to wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Vanguard Chamber units. So that would be like things like Paladors. Paladors are pretty good in a fight. So +1 to wound, getting some free +1, getting +1 to hit from like all that attack or something. I love that. But let me pitch you an idea, because I think the Vanguard Raptors Hurricane Crossbows might end up being really cheap because Games Workshop have forgotten about them. And if they do end up being cheap and you can get 4 units of 6 in about 1,000 points, that's going to be over 100 shots. Oh, sorry, I should talk about their shooting profile first. A unit of 3, each model has got 4 shots each. So unit of 6 is going to have 24 shots, and there's a champion, so it's going to be 25 shots. They've got crit 2 hits and anti-infantry 1, and they are 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. But if we pump those numbers up, like I've said, and we got ourselves 4 units of 6, because it is a spam edition after all, then we can have ourselves 100 shots in the shooting phase. Now, if we would like AoE +1 to hit, then we can just go back to our lovely Aether Wings, who are going to give us +1 to hit for Vanguard Chamber units for units nearby. And with crit 2 hits and 100 shots and a double turn, we're doing 200 shots. Not a lot of rend, but we're having an amazing time. Are we winning games? I don't know. But I'd love to see what that many bow shots look like, and it could be really fun. So I'm standing the Vanguard Raptors with Hurricane Crossbows. Our next unit are the lovely Griffhounds. 6 models in this unit with 2 health apiece, but they've only got a woeful 6-up save. They do move 9 inches, though, which is nice, and they've got a control value of 1. Apart from being beasts, where they can only ever count as 1 on an objective. They have a ton of attacks. 4 attacks per model, ×6, a lot of attacks, but it is hit on 4s, wound on 4s with no rend and damage 1. So it's between them and every Stormcast Eternal hero to do the least work possible. But in the shooting phase, they have the Warning Cry ability, where you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of this unit that was set up this turn. Then pick up to 3 friendly Stormcast Eternals units armed with ranged weapons that are within 12 inches of that enemy unit to be the targets. Roll a d3 for each target. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the enemy equal to the roll. So that's quite fun for units that might deep strike. It's weirdly anti-Stormcast in its profile, which is kind of interesting. You probably aren't going to see this unit very much, but maybe you like the idea of being able to have these little dogs running and doing all your battle tactics. You do still need units to do battle tactics, and they're fast. They've got an okay amount of wounds. They could be the people that score your battle tactics, which is nice. So there you go. All right, the next unit we're going to look at is a unit of 5 models. Each model has got 2 health with a 3-up save, and they move 6 inches. They've got a control value of 1, and they're a perfect little hybrid unit, the Vigilers. And a lot of people in the chat and also Stormcast people are already big stands of the Vigilers. Because the unit of 5, reinforceable to unit of 10, has got 2 shots each at 18-inch range with the Stormcaller bow, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, and then 2 attacks in combat each, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. So, if you thought about that as a combined profile, effectively it's 4 attacks per model. Reinforceable to a unit of 10, this is making this a pretty tasty unit at roughly 40 attacks. You can shoot one unit, charge another unit, which is pretty good. But they've also got a passive which really benefits the rest of the army in the Navigators of the Storm. If an enemy unit had any damage points allocated to it this turn by this unit's shooting attacks, you add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Stormcast Eternal units that target that unit for the rest of the turn. And because this happens in your shooting phase and it's for the whole turn, it does mean that other units that are shooting at that unit are going to get +1 to hit. It also means that other units that are fighting that unit are going to get +1 to hit, and multiple units are going to get +1 to hit, which is pretty good. So this is a pretty cool unit, maybe to take with all of our Hurricane crossbows. But also, it feels like it's fairly essential for just holding an objective, adding some support to the rest of your army. Feels pretty nice. Fulfills the same sort of role as some of the other infantry units, so you're hard-pressed to get everything in, but seems like a really good unit. We are about to talk about Liberators. Liberators is a unit of 5 models. I mean, it could be a unit of 10 models, I don't care. It's got 10 health, 2 health per model for 10 health across a unit of 5 models, and they've got a 3-up save. They are infantry, so they've got so many bonuses we can give them. They're Warrior Chamber, so you can do some really fun stuff with them as well. If a unit of them dies, you're going to be able to give ward saves out and stuff like that. In combat, they are 2 attacks per model, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2, with one guy having a grand hammer that, 1 has got a grand hammer, 4 have got the war hammers, I apologize, which are only damage 1. There are other infantry units that are more expensive, but they do more work. They've got a passive called Stalwart Defenders, where you add 3 to this unit's control score if it's contested an objective. But they don't do anything. They don't have a role. There are other units that are more fighty. There are other units that are more fighty and also a wizard at the same time, which is pretty wild. There are other units that are faster. There are other units that are more tanky. There are other units that are more killy. There are other units, just like the Vigilers, who hold objectives and shoot better. And so they don't have a role. And so, they're role-less, and they're just not very good because of that. So you would end up making them really cheap, which would feel really weird to have cheap Stormcast. So there we go. Unfortunately, they're not great, but there's loads of really cool Stormcast units which are good. Our next unit fulfilling a similar role, but are much better at doing it, are Vanquishers. They are a anti-infantry unit with 5 models in the unit, at 2 health each with a 3-up save. They move 5 inches, so they're pretty slow. But they have got 2 attacks per model, so 10 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1. But if you are targeting a unit with 5 or more models, then you add 1 to the damage characteristic. So if you were to reinforce the unit, you could have 21 attacks that are damage 2, which is legit. 21 attacks, damage 2. And because you can have multiple Vanquisher units get that additional damage bonus because they're hitting units that have been reinforced. And if you were to run the unit that is making units strike first or making enemy units strike last, you could hit them multiple times. So I think that's actually pretty great. So these are really, really nice. Another 5-model unit with 2 health per model with a 3-up save that moves 5 inches are Vindicators. Vindicators are good at holding an objective, but not as good as Quest to Soulsworn. Their job is to maybe be reinforced, have a unit of 10. They've got 2 attacks each, 3/3s, rend 1, damage 1. If they get charged, that goes up to rend 2. And they have an ability that you use in any combat phase called Hold the Shield Wall, where if this unit did not charge this turn, if theirs did not charge this turn on a 4+, this unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. So Vindicators. And I will be saying Vindicators forever, even though it's Vindictors. So their job is like, to be charged. But personally, I like to be more proactive and charge. Also, I think there are better units to be charged in this army, like the Soulsworn as an example. So yeah, this isn't an army. This isn't a unit I think are that good. Our next unit is Vanguard Hunters, and they kind of fulfill the same role as Vigilers, but probably not as good as Vigilers. There's 5 models in the unit with 2 health each on a 3-up save, as is kind of tradition at this point. They only move 5 inches as well, but because they are Vanguard, they do have run and retreat and shoot and charge. So like you can run and charge and shoot and retreat and charge and shoot, which is nice. They've got 2 shots, but only at 10 inches compared to Vigilers 18 inches, and they hit worse, 4s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1, but they do have shooting combat, and then the Stormwrought weapon is 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, and again, this unit is a unit of 5 and can be reinforced. Obviously, it compares on their points compared to Vigilers, but they do have a couple of other abilities as well. They're a little bit more mobile than Vigilers with run and shoot and charge. They've got this ability called Astral Compass, which lets you pick an enemy unit to be the target during deployment, and that unit is hunted. And then with Star Marked passive, you add 2 inches to this unit's move characteristic while a hunted enemy is on the battlefield, and in addition, you add 1 to hit rolls for a unit's attacks that target a hunted enemy unit. So this unit becomes even faster and able to move around the board, but you already have fast units that are better in shooting or combat, so I can't really see a role for the Vanguard Hunters. Okay, we got the brand new Stormstrike Paladors. I apologize. This is a unit of 3 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 6. You can arm them with either swords or lances, and it doesn't matter which one you arm them with because they have the same profile, which is cool. It means you don't have to choose between which one you think looks the best. Each model has got 5 health with a 3-up save, so that is a really, really reasonable 15 health, up to 30 health on a 3-up save, which is cool. So comparable to things like Varangard, things like some of those other, like Agrodons as an example. Unfortunately, they then lose out compared to these other models in not being as good in combat. As an example. So the Stormstrike Lances or Blades have got 3 attacks per model. So Unit 3 is going to have 9, 10 for the champion, but reinforced units are going to have 19 attacks. 3s and 3s, rend 1, rend 2 against infantry, and damage 1, but damage 2 on the charge. Unfortunately, they don't have anything like retreat and charge or run and charge, as an example, but they do move 12 inches, so they're fairly fast. But that's sad. And what gets really sad is their Griff Charges Talons is 3 attacks per model, which does equal a lot, so either 9 or 18, but then only hits on 5s, wins on 3s. So the hit on 5s is pretty tragic, and I don't really know why they do. They're birds. You would think that they're quite fast, but there we go. But they do have a passive called Ride for Vengeance, where if any friendly warrior chamber units have been destroyed this battle, you can re-roll charge rolls for this unit. If this unit has strike, and then this unit also has strike first if it charged in the same turn. So that's a passive, but a warrior chamber unit needs to be dead for you to get strike first or charge, and you have no other ability. Like, in order for you to gain an ability for this unit, a unit needs to die. Don't love this unit, to be honest, which is really sad because I really love what this unit looks like. It's a bit of a shame. Our next unit is a Stormstrike Chariot. It's a single model, can't reinforce it. It's got 10 health and a 3-up save. So it's a pretty good pinning unit. It can just hold a unit in. Moves 10 inches and doesn't, unfortunately, have any bonuses to its charge, which would have, I think, made this pretty fun and a little bit endearing as a unit. It's got either the Griff Charger's Razor Beaks, which, interestingly, there are 2 of them. They hit better than the other Griff Charger, or the Griff Paladors, or whatever they're called. They hit on 4s. as opposed to the other ones hitting on 5s. So I don't know what's happened there. Better Griffins, dudes. Then they've got the Stormstrike Axe, which is 3 attacks with +1 damage on the charge. And then you either have the Great Storm Bow or the Tempesta Spear, both of which aren't really worth talking about, to be honest. Now, they've got a couple of abilities. The first one, Azir Unleashed, is in any charge phase. If this unit charges phase, pick an enemy within an inch, roll a d3 on a 2+, inflict mortal damage, and Celestial Blaze, when this unit uses Power Through command, you do an additional d3 mortals, and you can add d6 inches. So this unit's job is charge, power through, charge, power through, which, retreating charge or 3d6 charge or some of those other bits would have been quite nice to have kind of kept that momentum up, especially as the power through is going to cost you a command point. But it can do potentially a lot of d3 mortal damage over the course of the game, which could be quite fun, but probably not something I'd be excited to do. Next unit we're going to look at is the unit that came in the box, in the launch box, and there's a new multi-part coming out. So the unit in the box, Reclusians, units of 3 models, and you can have a shield and an axe, and then with the new box, you can have 2 axes or 2 hammers. But thankfully, if you're the person that doesn't really like WYSIWYG, it doesn't matter what you take because it's all the same model or the same profile, and that profile is 3 models per 3 models in a unit, up to 6 models if you reinforce them, 3 health per model, and then a 3-up save, and they move 5 inches. Control score of 1 per 1. They don't actually have any special abilities. They kind of do. They've got the Ruination Chamber ability, which everyone has, which on a d6 you can ignore a non-core ability on a 4+, and you can add up to +2 to that thanks to your memoriams, where each one of your memoriams, there's 2, can add 1 to this unit's resistance rolls, but you lose those tokens, those memoriam tokens, the first time you make a save roll of a 1, which, seeing as this is a frontline fighting unit, you're probably going to lose them. Oh, you can only add 1 to these unit's resistance rolls. Oh, I apologize. Only add 1. So, but the reason you're going to take this unit is because you would like a really tanky unit that's going to get into combat. With a 3-up save, they're Ruination Chamber, so if you did take the Griff Charger guy, you can make him fight twice. As an example, that's something you definitely can do. They're infantry, so you can bless their weapons to give them more attacks. You can potentially up to 2 attacks each, I think, extra. So a unit of 6 could have, a unit of 6 would have, 3 times 5, 15, 30 attacks. Yeah, you can have 30 attacks. 3s and 3s, Rend 1, damage 2 with crit mortals. They are a little bit slow, but thanks to the new Portal Loo, you are going to be able to teleport them around the board, which is nice. The Reclusians have made it into some recent lists for Stormcast Eternal players. I don't really know why, but people are taking them. And I couldn't tell you why, but they're there. And people are playing with them. So, they hit a lot of stuff. They're probably cheap, which feels odd for, the biggest, baddest warriors, that they've been fighting for 1,000 generations. They should be insane. Honestly, I would have liked to have seen them have fight twice and seen them similar to Chosen, especially as they're a unit of 3 compared to Chosen's unit of 5. So you would want them to be more punchy because there's less models. Is what it is. If you like them, I like them. I think they look cool. So we've already talked about Prors way back because they're so good at keeping your heroes alive. If you're running big dragons, you're probably going to get that 5-up ward save from Prors. Pretty good. But Prosecutors, ladies and gentlemen, I've been talking about Prosecutors since the beginning of Age of Sigmar 4, and I'm going to continue to do so. Prosecutors is a unit of 3 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 6. Each model's only got 2 health and a 3-up save, and I will grant you that for a frontline combat character, that is a pretty weak profile. Low life pool. Sorry, I'm slurring my words there. But you don't have a lot of life per model. Reinforceable up to unit 6, you've only got 12 health on a 3-up save. You can get him a 5-up ward save. You can Finest Hour +1 to your saves and all those other bits of jazz. And they are also Ruination Chamber, which does actually open up a lot of different buffs that you can give them. And don't forget, because they move 12 inches, you can give them strike first, move them 12 inches, and then my favorite ability is the fact that they have the Heralds of Righteousness, where you add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls to a maximum of 3. If you aren't in combat or if you aren't charging, you aren't doing damage, you aren't engaging. They're also really fast. You can deep strike, and deep strike with a 3d6 charge is a very effective charge range. It's very, very good, especially with a reroll. You can definitely bang a massive unit of these and charge in. They're also pretty cool infantry. So Blessed Weapons is going to give you extra attacks, which is really nice. They've got a coherency range of 2 inches, which is good because those wings are super annoying. They've also Ruination Chamber, so they can ignore stuff on a 4-up. But it's their profile that I really like. If you're a fan of Vigilers, I'm going to argue that you should also be a fan of Prosecutors. Prosecutors are a hybrid profile where their combat attack with the Storm Called Javelin is going to be 10 attacks from a unit of 3, 19 attacks from a unit of 6. Hit on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, but on the charge it goes to damage 2. So they're very similar to like the Paladors as an example, but don't cost as many points. They're faster and they get quicker into combat. But in addition, a unit is they've got 1 shot at 10-inch range, which is 3 3s, rend 1, damage D3. So when you reinforce that unit, you're going to have 7 shots, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage D3. That's a pretty decent shooting profile before you go in and charge in, which I really like. I think this unit is excellent. There's loads of buffs to support this unit being really good. Your opponent cannot count on you not getting a 3d6 counter charge, which is in the War Scroll. So they've always got to be conscious of that because you're like, wow, that's a big, long counter charge as well. They're fast for doing battle tactics. And yes, their survivability is probably a little bit of an issue, but I really rate them, and I think they're pretty good. Okay, our next 2 units are the Vanguard Paladors, which come in 2 flavors, one with shock hand axes and one with javelins. For some reason, having different weapon profiles here means you do have different War Scrolls. So the Vanguard Paladors with shock hand axes, they're really fast. They move 14 inches, which is great. 3 models in the unit with 5 health each with a 3-up armor save is crazy. Reinforceable to a unit of 6 for 30 health on a 3-up save is absolutely cool. Control value 2. They've also got a bolt storm pistol each. So unit of 6 is going to be 7 shots, reinforced unit. But it's 4s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1. So it's like, it's a whatever burger. However, they're great in combat. They're super good because the shock hand axes have +1 damage on the charge, but they start at damage 2. So unironically, these guys are one of the heaviest hitters you have in your army. They are only 2 attacks each, but with a reinforced unit of 6, you have 13 attacks, damage 3, which is pretty legit. And then the Griff Chargers have got 3 attacks each, and they hit on 4s, not 5s, like the other Griff Chargers. They've also got a passive Vanguard Chamber, which means you also get run and charge and shoot and retreat and charge and shoot. So these things can be moving 20 inches and then charging. So they're so crazy fast. Move 14, wild. Run and charge, wild. Run and shoot, wild. Retreat and charge, especially when it's a unit of 6 with 30 health. Sure, they can get locked in combat pretty easy, but just retreat and charge. That's great. They've also got the Shocking Strikes passive, where if any damage points are allocated to an enemy unit by attacks made with this unit's shock hand axes, subtract 1 from wound rolls for that enemy unit's combat attacks for the rest of the turn. And that is also a great bonus. Don't forget, if you do take the Storm Coven, what I can do is give this unit strike first, then I can send them out, running and charging 20 inches, charging in, striking first into an enemy unit, making them -1 to wound, and then hitting with other units as well. That's really good. So I actually think that there's a build there for at least 1 unit of 6 of these, maybe even a couple of units. I really like that. That's fun. Then there's Vanguard Paladors with Stormstrike Javelins. They're the same number of models, the same armor save, same amount of health. They've got the Bolt Storm pistols and also the Star Strike Javelins. And these are 1 shot each, but they're damage 2. The Star Strike Javelin is much worse in combat with only 1 attack, damage 2, and then the Griff Charge is the same. And then they have run and shoot and charge, and they've got the charging volley where if this unit charged this turn, this unit can immediately make a shooting attack as if it were a shooting phase. But all of its attacks must target the enemy unit. In addition, unit Star Strike Javelins have shooting combat this phase. So basically you can run in and charge. I don't like these as much, but I think there's some interesting utility for them. One-shot damage 2, I don't think is super good. So I think I prefer the other guys. And as to the question, why do their Griff charges have better to hit than the other guys? I don't know. That's what I'm going to say. But I really rate at least the first Griff charge, and I think they're solid. Next unit we're looking at is Fulminators. We're into the Drakos now, and Drakos is a unit of 2, as will be all of the Drakos we talk about. 5 health, 3 up save. They only move 10 inches, which is, fast, but not as fast as most of the Stormcast units. Storm Blast is their ranged weapon attack. With 1 attack, 3s and 3s, Ren 2 damage D3, and you obviously get 2 across unit 2. Reinforceable to unit 4, so that's not bad. And then in combat, the Stormdrake Glaive is 3 attacks, damage 2, and +1 damage on the charge, which, with the 3 attacks from the Drakos Claws and Fangs, kind of makes me feel like they're better than the dragons, Storm Dragon Riders. I've forgotten their name. But unfortunately, they don't have as much health as the Dragon Riders. Stormdrake Guard, thank you. The Stormdrake Guard, they don't have as much health as them. So, but they probably are a little bit cheaper. They are an Extremist Chamber, so any 6s that they save are going to do a mortal damage back at the enemy at the end of the fight ability, and they've got Impaling Strikes, which is just D3 mortals on the charge on a 2-up. So, they are a punchy unit. A unit of 4 of these is going to be very punchy, and they're deliverable, unlike something like the Grand Hammer Annihilators. Are they as good? I think they're really fighting against the Griff Chargers and Hand Axes, actually. I think they're not too bad. I think there's a little bit of fight between them, and you have to decide which one you prefer. Our next unit is a hybrid unit in, again, the Drakos unit, Tempesters, so it's just 2 models. The difference between these and the other guys is that they are not as good in combat, but they have an additional shooting attack in the Volley Storm crossbows. So this is our Tempesters. 3 shots per model, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, but only 12 inches with crit 2 hits. The reason that you would want to take these is because of the overwhelming Volley Storm ability, which you do in any shooting phase. You pick an enemy unit that has any damage points allocated to it by this unit's Volley Storm crossbows, roll dice on a 2+, the target cannot use all-out defense command in the following combat phase. If that's a major concern to you, you have a unit that does that job. Probably, I prefer hitting them with a Purple Sun or something, or just killing them outright. But, all-out defense can really stop, some damage going through. You don't necessarily have a lot of rend in this army, I'm really starting to realize. So you probably want to stop that, but I don't think this unit's that great. Our next unit of Drakos are Concussors. The Concussors have lightning hammers, therefore they have got crit mortals. That's their special thing. Still got the same shooting attack, same life, same amount of models. Their rider does the same thing. Extremist, same thing. They do have this Thunderstruck ability, which is done in any combat phase, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 3-up, that target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn. 3+, not super exciting. Can't use commands, not too stressed. And the last unit in the Stormcast Eternals book is our unit of Draconith Guard Desolators. This unit has, their special thing is they have a Thunder Axe, where they are anti-infantry +1 rends. They're actually up to rend 2, which is pretty good. And their Thunder Axe gets an additional +1 damage if the enemy unit has got 10 or more models. So if in the future hordes become a real problem in Age of Sigmar 4, then a unit of 4 Thunder Axe guys is going to be pretty good. It's going to be 13 damage, 3 attacks at Ren 2, which should do some really solid work. And that is our last unit. Okay, time for a conclusion now. Time to summon everything that we've just covered. I've just covered this in the past 6 hours of streaming with the Twitch chat. And I realize this is a 2.5-hour video, so the conclusion is going to be a lot. Biggest book available for Age of Sigmar. How do I feel about it? I think there are some standout units. I want to talk about those right away. Standout units for me personally is Yannastra. One of the most fun units. 3d6 charge, deep strike, hunt monsters, ruin them. 11 out of 10. Great. Neeve Black Talon. Hunt down heroes. Got a cool unit. Really fun. Run around. Have a good time. Excellent. Standout units that I think are going to just be all the time there. Soul Coven feels amazing. I think you could have incredibly fun time with Ionis Critborn, doing all of the Soul Blaze, constantly doing that. That could be really fun. I think there's some really good units like that in the book. Then it starts to become everything basically being similar to being useless to not being the same. Oh, I also love prosecutors. Prosecutors are also really good as well. I think they're really fun. And I think there are some standout units as well, like the Soulsworn are really good. I can see why people really like the Vigilers, although I'm not really sold. Obviously, Long Strikes are silly good. Bastion's amazing. Yeah, I love Bastion. He's great. I actually really like the Paladors with hand axes. I think there's a build there, which is good as well. So that's my kind of conclusion. I think reading through all of the heroes, it's disappointing they didn't give them more of a flavor and give them more of an identity. And I kind of understand the difference between the Ruination guys and, the Vanguard guys, but not really that much, to be honest. So it feels like a book that's trying to be several things, but doesn't really understand its own identity, which, if I'm honest, really feels how Games Workshop have always felt about Stormcast. They've never really known what Stormcast are. Are they, what are they this edition? What are they next edition? There were dragons last edition. You're like, okay, cool. Are dragons good now? They're like, not really. They're like, fine. You're like, okay, well, what are they this time? You're like, I don't know. And with the removal of the battle line, looking at the humble Liberator really makes you understand that they don't understand what they want to be. So I think that's a little bit tough. But if I was a Stormcast player, I wouldn't be depressed. I think that there is loads of, there's just so much in this book. There's fucking loads of stuff. So I wouldn't be super depressed that it's bad or not good, because I think there's some incredible builds in here. And you'll see some people build some really strong tournament lists. But I think there's also some really fun builds. And that's what I'm really trying to get at. There's some really fun, engaging units in this book. And your teleport, like your army-wide being able to deploy, your teleport from your terrain piece, all really fun. So you can do some really fun and engaging things on the tabletop with this army. But you're going to have to work for it, which is fine. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please do leave a comment. Let me know what you think about it. Like, subscribe. And also, if you want to support work I do in the future, like this work, then I have a Patreon. And if you do join up my Patreon, we have a Discord that will really help me out. And honestly, I do this for work. And hopefully you understand how much effort I put in. Hopefully you think that's worth, the price of a cup of coffee a month, and join my Patreon, and that would be cool. Thanks for watching my video. There'll be other videos coming soon about the Armies of Renown and the Regiments of Renown, which hopefully you'll enjoy. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.